Hello, my name is Pseudo, or Alfred, whichever you prefer. The purpose of this video is an extensive breakdown of the original Resident Evil, as well as highlighting the differences between both Chris and Jill's playthrough. At the end of the video will be an overall review of the game. For those who don't know what Resident Evil is, or do but have never played it, it's a survival horror experience that released in 1996 with the release of a horror game called Resident Evil. However, in Japan, it was called Biohazard, which I hadn't known before making this video, so learning that was very interesting. It would have been called Biohazard here if it were not for licensing issues. Well, at least that's what I'll chalk it up to, because they were having issues with other things named Biohazard, like a punk rock band in New York, I guess. Whatever. The name Resident Evil actually came from a contest that Capcom held within its employees. This proved to be one of the best decisions ever, because Resident Evil is a fucking badass name, and I stand by that. Like, it's just Resident Evil alone just sounds, oh. Notice I said horror experience. This is because the game found itself expanding such as movies, TV shows, books, etc., which have all had varying success, some more than others, but it's nothing less than a display of how impactful the IP was. The first release was dubbed a survival horror, and despite exhibiting similar tropes to games that have already existed, Resident Evil went on to pretty much invent the genre of survival horror itself. At least it goes down in history that way. It's kinda crazy to think about, because the reason Resident Evil even exists in the first place is just because the game's director told the creator to derive inspiration from a game called Sweet Home 1989, which is arguably the very first survival horror experience. Actually, the real reason is the same reason that Monster Hunter and Devil May Cry exist, but that's honestly a whole video in itself. Today I'll be playing the Director's Cut, which is a slight remix of the game. A Director's Cut is a version of the movie that reflects the director's original intentions, usually released after the first studio version or theatrical release. The Director's Cut sought to change a few things after the original Resident Evil release. First off, difficulty was changed to include an arranged mode and a beginner's mode. The arranged mode was for those who had played the game before and were knowledgeable. Beginner's mode is exactly what you think it is. It essentially gives you more health, enemies take more damage, more ammunition, more ink ribbons, which is what I call the save devices. It changed some camera angles, and there was an issue with the Western release not having the lock-on feature that the Japanese release did have when it came out. Despite being marketed as original and uncensored, the Western releases were censored. Just straight up, they were censored. Capcom was like, oops, here's the uncensored intro, and they uploaded it for free on their site. But after that, they released the DualShock version, which is the Director's Cut with rumble capabilities for the DualShock, as well as a reprised soundtrack that is The problem is, despite being released a year later, the DualShock version didn't seek to fix these changes at all, and I'm left to believe that they might still exist in the DualShock version today, so I don't think they ever changed it. I am curious, since the Director's Cut was released on the PS5, which is how I'm playing it, would it be called Biohazard if it, for anyone in Japan? If you're Japanese, let me know. I would like to know. Right, so I think I covered everything that I should cover in this section. I will say that after listening to the soundtrack, granted I didn't get to play the game with the soundtrack, so I don't know how impactful it was. I can definitely say it's nowhere near as iconic, though I won't go as far as to say that it's bad or pitiful as one of my, not one of my, but when somebody dropped, they're praising the Director's Cut, but they said, play the original Director's Cut. I'm like, this is the original DC. The DualShock version with the rumble controls is the or Rumble Vibration is the one that has the reprised soundtrack, and I will go as far to say that the original one is a lot better. It's also very minimal. It's like way more minimal. The new one it's kind of bloated. It has a lot of tracks. But I'm also kind of interested in playing the game and seeing how effective the soundtrack would actually be. But yeah, I think I've rambled on for long enough. So cue more rambling. My, don't you love cheesy horror? Growing up, I was always a fan of the genre. Whether or not a piece of media was good or bad, you always had something to laugh or talk about. I was into creepypastas and disturbing things that keep you up at night, like the occult and things among that nature. It was always just my jam. So naturally I'd be drawn to things like retro horror, right? Which I suppose at one point was just referred to as horror. Regardless, for a long time, this is where I found myself spending most of my life growing up. Despite never having played a Silent Hill game, when PT came out, I remember how excited I was for that. PT was so good, oh my god. But it never came to be, and to this day I still get sad when I think about it. However, all was not lost, because then Resident Evil 7 Beginning Hour came out, and it wasn't PT. Granted, it was a few years later, sure. But Resident Evil 7 got its inspiration from the same sources, and it was such a good idea because we fans felt that we were getting a spiritual successor. It wasn't the same, but it managed to capture that essence, and to me, that was just encapsulating. I was beyond excited for Resident Evil 7, and when I got my hands on it, I played the hell out of that game. I even got the platinum, I loved it so much, except the boat part. Point being, it was my love for all things horror and creepy that really catapulted me into the Resident Evil hemisphere, and Resident Evil 7 reinvented what Resident Evil was, and it happened to appeal to that exact audience that needed it, and I've been enjoying it ever since. Though I don't watch any of the movies or animated anything, and I haven't played all of the games. Also, am I the only one who doesn't like the animation style for this new movie? No? Okay. Don't get me wrong, I had been a Resident Evil fan before Resident Evil 7. I remember playing Resident Evil 5 when I was younger, but that's about it. A lot of faint memories. So Resident Evil 7 was really my gateway back into these games, which on second thought, if PT came to be, I might have been drawn to the OG Silent Hill games in the same way. After platinuming Resident Evil 7, I had my fix and stayed away for just a little while. Every now and then I'd play the game for fun, but I was hooked and I needed more. So after beating Resident Evil 7 many times, and eventually taking a long break, I came back to the franchise with Resident Evil HD Remaster on the PS4, which is the same as Resident Evil 2002 Remake for the GameCube, just visually more impressive. One of the few games that actually stuck by its title of a true remastering in my opinion. I played through that game a few times, but I only beat it once. Reason being I was a bit younger and sometimes the game would just be too much for my brain. But eventually I did beat it, and I remember enjoying the experience. But what I don't remember was the experience. A lot of time has passed since I first played the game, and until now, so a lot of it I can't really recall. I decided to revisit it, but before I got to set some time aside for it, I was made aware of a game called Resident Evil Director's Cut. I was confused, but my ears perk when I hear new unknown Resident Evil. I was unsure what it was, so I looked at some screenshots, and it dawned on me. This is the original Resident Evil in all of its glory. Well, slightly remixed. For pretty much ever, I'd been telling myself that the Resident Evil HD Remaster was just the original, but remastered. I hadn't known that the original looked like this. It makes perfect sense considering Resident Evil Remake and I both dropped in the same year. I think I would have known if I'd given it thought because of the way the OG Resident Evil 2 looked, and I'd seen that a few times before I learned of the director's cut, but I didn't really put two and two together. However, now that I was aware of such a thing, I certainly couldn't pass it up. So after setting some time aside, I finally got around to it.
Resident Evil. Alpha Team is flying around the forest zone situated in northwest Raccoon City, where we're searching for the helicopter of our compatriots Bravo Team, who disappeared during the middle of our mission.
Found it?
No, I haven't found it yet. Bizarre murder cases have recently occurred in Raccoon City. There are outlandish reports of families being attacked by a group of about 10 people. Victims were apparently eaten. Bravo Team went to the hideout of the group and disappeared.
Look, Crest!
It was Bravo Team's helicopter. Nobody was in it. But strangely, most of the equipment was still there. However, we soon discovered why.
The OG starts with an actual live-action sequence that uses real actors. Immediately upon seeing this, the dopamine rushed to my head instantly. This shit is badass, and in my opinion, it's got everything that you'd want from this type of experience. From the music, or rather the lack of music, camera angles, the atmosphere, down to the cheesy facial expressions and postures. This opening sequence is actual excellence. Even the voice lines are very obviously overdubbed, which isn't an issue. Maybe it'll get monotonous after a while, but in my opinion, whether or not the voice actors lack the passion or deliver the lines like this on purpose, I think it definitely adds to the overall experience. Now let's break down what's actually happening. First thing we get is the date and location of this event. July 1998, Raccoon Forest. Raccoon Forest is located southwest of Raccoon City. The Alpha Team of the STARS unit is flying over the forest where Bravo Team disappeared, surveying where their crashed helicopter is, but to no avail. Both the Alpha and Bravo Team are part of STARS, which stands for Special Tactics and Rescue Services. Chris of Alpha Team, who's also one of our main playable characters, mentions the context in which we are here. There have been bizarre murder cases showing up in Raccoon City. Cases of families being attacked by groups of 10. Their remains indicating that they'd been seemingly eaten. I don't know about you, but if I heard anything like that about my hometown, I am wasting absolutely no time. After some searching, our other main playable character calls out to Chris.
Look, Crest!
She spotted the helicopter.
It was Bravo Team's helicopter. Nobody was in it. But strangely, most of the equipment was still there. However, we soon discovered why.
After landing and getting out, the Alpha Team approaches the Bravo Team's crashed copter. We then get a look at everyone in Alpha Team, which I'm going to hold off on the names of, and you'll see why in a moment. We're made aware of an enemy lurking in the dark. After looking around, one of the Alpha Team members finds a gun and calls out to the other members. He picks it up to further inspect and finds a hand still attached to the gun. He gets startled and is then attacked by the enemy, which we now know to be some kind of mutated dog-like creature. The dog seems to make quick work of him. This gets the attention of the other members as we then get a close-up of Jill screaming his name,
Joseph!
which we now know to be Joseph. The rest of the team is in chase as well, by more dogs or just that dog. I'm unsure, but honestly I think they're valid regardless. This is a post-edit because somehow I forgot to mention that the helicopter flew off without Alpha Team. Very bizarre if you ask me.
No! Don't go!
After a goofy-ass run scene and many shots missed, they're chased into the mansion. And I just want to highlight this because what the fuck? Why are they running like that? We end up getting character intros, which I think is pretty badass.
Jill, run for that house!
There are only 3 STARS members left now. Captain Wesker, Jill, and myself. We don't know where Barry is.
Chris Redfield. Jill Valentine. Barry Burton. Rebecca Chambers. Albert Wesker. Resident Evil.
Unfortunately, the letters are hard to make out, but it looks like we're also made aware of a character that we haven't seen yet, named Rebecca Chambers. However, based on her outfit, we can infer that she may have been part of the missing Bravo team. After the intro, we find that 3 of us made it into the house: Jill, Wesker, and Chris. Finally, we've set our eyes on what we'll be looking at for the next however many hours. The graphics are very 1996, and thankfully I was able to play in upscaled resolution. The graphics actually do a good job. Most of the map is only ever indoors, so it doesn't need too much to get the point across, using low poly character models and pixelated textures. I'd go as far as to say that this is representative of the best graphics could get back then, but there wasn't a moment where I disliked what I was looking at. Well, there was one section that was kind of abysmal on the eyes, but I'll point it out when we actually get there. I'd say the perfect way to describe it is aesthetically pleasing, at least to those who enjoy the retro horror aesthetic, which I suppose at one point was just the horror aesthetic. I also want to praise the atmosphere and overall tone of the game. Not only does it nail the horror experience, but it perfectly manages to capture that original feeling that could only be described as Resident Evil. And I mean, throughout every section of this game, I feel as though there aren't many other franchises that can capture that feeling of being its own thing, rather than just another horror title. I'd argue this as a fact because Resident Evil goes down in history as what truly defines the genre of survival horror. It pushed the standard. It made other games want to copy it. You play one of those games and you think to yourself, Resident Evil. The impact it had on gaming was major, going down as a masterpiece and being reveled by many as such.
I don't know what happened.
Barry! Where's Barry?
Well, I'm sorry, but he's probably...
No. What is that?
I'll go and check.
Okay, Jill and I will stay in the hall in case of an emergency.
Chris? Take care.
As Chris mentioned before, we don't know where Barry is. Wesker proclaims that he's probably dead. We hear a gunshot off in the distance, and after a short exchange of dialogue, I go to investigate. I went off as Chris, and Jill wished me good luck in the most passionate, caring voice a woman ever could.
Chris? Take care.
Chris is a chat. He says nothing and walks off. Side note, I really appreciate how, back when you were a kid, it was as simple as I want to play as the boy, or I want to play as the girl, but now everyone picks Jill because they're lonely. After going through the door in the shot's direction, we find ourselves in the dining room. Finally getting our hands on the game, we get to see how it plays. Immediately, I notice the controls. Now, Resident Evil is known for having tight controls, as in almost every title it adds to the atmosphere of the game, even in the action-oriented games like Resident Evil 4. Side note, I would go as far as to say that the more fluent controls are in modern gaming is the same reason that a lot of new players are drawn to these games. Bear with me. I think this because my friend came to my place and wanted to play Resident Evil 4 Remake at daytime with the sun out, beaming through my window. We happened to be on the same mission, so I had to explain to him that I wanted to experience the rest of the game in the dark at 2 AM so I could get the full horror experience because I'm desensitized, duh. To which he then played the Mercenaries mode. And even then, he showed the same amount of attention that he would if we were playing the game normally. But the idea that he was still immersed enough to be scared at the daytime makes me think that some people may be too scared of horror games to even try them despite acknowledging how good they are. So, the more fluent controls may genuinely serve as a response to this notion. The idea that people see more fluent controls and recognize that as a safety, in my eyes, is what invites more people to play the game. And I'm sure there's plenty of people who started showing interest in the game just after seeing the parry mechanic, but that's just pseudo-logic. To expand on this point, the controls themselves are a level of immersion, and depending on who you are, it could make or break your experience. This is especially true for the older games, and most definitely the one that started it all. After moving back and forth for a second, I realized that these controls are, yeah, holy shit. There's really no way that I can't add to the atmosphere. For anyone who's played this, you know what I mean. I have to control all of this guy's movements with the D-pad. I could use the analog stick, but it's truly not any easier. It took a while to get used to, but I did get used to it, and eventually, by the end of the game, I found that they were bad, but honestly, not that bad if you think about it. You'll find me praising these controls more than anything else, because it truly does add to the tension while you play. But being a true product of its time and released in 1996, you're commonly prone to a lot of BS in this game, and in hindsight it's kinda weird to have to run against the wall to avoid enemies just because you want to save ammo. It's either that or run all the way around the map, and depending on where you are, you may not be able to. Depending on how far you are, you may not be able to. It's also just not fun. And I would argue that for the same as just baiting the zombie to get around it, doing that so many times is kind of tedious. But if you're low on ammo, this is really your only option. Even running against a wall doesn't work sometimes because of how narrow the halls can be. So if I didn't have the rewind feature, I'd have been set back in my playthrough a myriad of times, and I just don't imagine that being fun whatsoever. More on the rewind in a moment. I wouldn't say the controls took away from my experience, and in fact, me running against a wall to avoid enemies was a result of the tension I felt. However, I can imagine this game being absolutely brutal to those who have played it when it released. Maybe too brutal. I'm very curious as to how many people gave up just because the game was too complicated. Because I can tell you right now that people nowadays would feel these controls and it would be an immediate turnoff. They're so tight that the lack of knowledge using them will indubitably end in your demise. And if you manage to convince me otherwise, you will be crowned king. But I have no enemies. I say this not because I doubt your ability, but because they were designed that way on purpose. The problem here is that it's a potential quit moment for an amazing experience. The idea of dying and being returned to the title screen because of how the controls work is mentally exhausting. And it may seem simple, but it's tedious to not at least be sent back to your previous save point. But dying, being sent back to the title, having to reselect your memory card slot, and potentially needing to replay a significant chunk of the story because you made the poor judgment call not to save at the right time, or maybe you wanted to, but you're low on health and can't make it back without the controls playing to your detriment. Yes, the controls add to the atmosphere as well as a whole level of tension on its own, but I seriously ask, at what cost? The truth of the matter is, not everyone's going to have the willpower to push through even just the beginning stages of what this game has to offer, and I truly don't blame them. This game is hands down not for the faint of heart, so I truly commend those out there who actually managed to complete this game without the hand-holding that I did. Enter the rewind feature. If it wasn't already a surprise that we'd gotten the director's cut in the first place, thanks to the premium PS Plus Classic Collection, it also released with the option to save wherever you want and to retrace your steps via a frame-by-frame. Exactly how you think it works is how it works. When I say this game is too brutal, I say it as someone who didn't even complete my first go-around on Resident Evil Remaster. It took me a couple of times to come back to that game before completing it, because honestly, I just wasn't good at it. I don't know if there's a good way to be good at Resident Evil, at least on your first playthrough, but I am the dude who would have quit to a lot of the stuff that this game fed me because of a lot of scenarios were just asking too much of me. And sure, you could argue that I played without stakes, to which I would say, you're kind of right, but I can't necessarily agree fully. See it from this perspective. The game really felt the same ultimately. It just kind of stopped me from having to play huge chunks of progress, which is a huge quit moment for a lot of players, including me. It would have been, and has been in the past. I could tolerate it at first, but if I didn't have the rewind feature, I will honestly admit you would not be watching this video right now. Despite that, it didn't really affect my gameplay. I didn't play any better or worse because of it. The rewind feature just kept me playing and allowed me to experience the game it was meant to. Well, maybe not meant to be played, but enjoyed for sure. It kept me from feeling that feeling of suffering that I can see 100% pushing people away from this game, never to try it again. So overall, I'm grateful for the rewind feature, and I'm glad it exists. Now that we've marveled at the visuals and aesthetic, as well as criticized the controls, we can now truly dive into the world of survival horror. In the dining room is a dining table. The sound of the grandfather clock creates a sense of uneasy solitude. The only thing of significance here is the wooden emblem above the fireplace, which we'll leave for now because we don't need it, and grabbing it now would be wasting a slot. One thing that persists through the early games of Resident Evil is your need for inventory management. Even in today's games it hasn't gone anywhere, but it's definitely a lot more generous. In this game, being ill knowledge will cause you to be holding on to things you don't need, when it's beneficial to leave it there and grab it later. This goes for resources as well. While we're here in the menu, here are some things of note. The menu has a style in which, through my harshness, I'll describe as primitive. Firstly, keep in mind that most of your options here will be useful, the map being arguably most important, though I suppose I wouldn't die on that hill. Next to the map is Files, which gives us the option to look over any text documents we may find throughout the game. On the small box to the left we have an item window, as well as the items to the right. The use option should be self-explanatory, but if you're retarded, it means that we use the item. Check gives us the ability to inspect the item with further detail, like the name of the item, giving us a control to rotate it and see anything about the item that we may find useful. Combin is just short for combine, which allows you to mix herbs and reload any weapons that you may have. Interacting with the door will trigger a door opening animation. Get used to this animation because every single door plays this animation, as well as some staircases. Through the door we're met with a hallway. All the doors in the hallway are locked as of now, but if you take a left from where we entered you'll be met with a short cutscene. This is a first look at an enemy, and get used to him because he's one of the few zombie models in the game. We interrupt his meal tonight. It looks like he's having Kenneth from Bravo team. You can try and kill him with your knife, but that's probably not the greatest idea. Since we can't progress, we should go back out to where we last saw Jill and Wesker. Ideally, a speedrunner will likely go back out the door immediately, as this is what is required to trigger the next story beat. At least now we have a Beretta handgun that belonged to Jill. So if you killed that zombie with a knife, you either never stopped playing this game until you beat it no matter how hard it got, or you did not get very far into the game at all. The first door I tried was the blue double doors on the right, and inside was a blue room where I found a map and some ink ribbons. There was also a locked door, so I left. I saved the game so I didn't have to watch the cutscene again. I then went through a door on the second floor, which led me to the dining room corridor. That shit rhymed. Up here is a movable statue and some zombies. The only goal for this room is to push the statue down to the lower floor. I tried to speedrun push the statue, but the controls were working against me and one of the zombies proved to be a formidable obstacle, so I decided to kill him and push it down. I didn't pick the item up until later though. I continued through the door on the other side of the room and tried to run past 3 zombies like an idiot. Once I got past them, I was met with a couple more locked doors, one of which had a passcode on it, which I'm realizing that I never even opened. I beat the game as Chris and I never opened up this door, so I have no idea what's behind this door. After realizing this for the first time, zombies I tried to ignore killed me. I do it to myself. Here's when I discovered that the game sends you back to the title screen, and despite me opening the options many times, I hadn't actually noticed the rewind feature yet. I died a few times before I realized it, though it wasn't before the game got egregious in some aspects. Honestly, dying isn't even the true punishment. It's hearing the intro at max volume blasting into your ears. Legitimately the most prominent jump scare this game has to offer. God damn. After I loaded back in, I went through a different door this time. The left door on the right side of the second floor, and here there was a zombie. I got past him by very normal immersive means. Taking a left we find a set of locked blue double doors. Interacting with it we get a prompt that says a carving of armor. I progressed and stumbled across the botany book after entering the door at the end of the hall. The botany book explains how to mix herbs. Something funny I noticed is that they refer to your health as physical strength. Just thought that was silly. I progressed through another door and met with another corridor. I go downstairs and here is the first safe room. Praise the safe room. I find an herbicide that happens to be useful later, so I decided to leave it in the safe box. Since the door down here is locked, I go upstairs and down the hallway onto another room with a fireplace, but I don't have a lighter, so there's nothing to do here yet. Back out to the main room. Or at least I tried to, but I died. After returning, I decided to go through the right door instead this time, and through this door is a mere hallway leading outside. Here we find another dead Bravo team member. His name was Forrest, and he seems to have been murdered by a murder of crows. The crows attacked me and I stabbed them, but I died. I returned and almost died again, but instead I acquired the ammo I wanted to and left. I went to the dining room corridor. I died again, so I got off and came back later. Here, I finally realized that the rewind feature was a thing, and it's when I started using it. Right, so another post-edit. Despite me having written these notes as I played, and along with my footage, I ended up deleting 2 hours of footage on accident. Yeah. I entered the room with the 3 zombies that I died to the first time and used it there. See, the reason I don't consider the experience ruined or anything is because I still had to get past these zombies, and there's plenty of situations that I was in that I chose to rewind because I couldn't actually get past the enemy, nor did I have the means to deal with them. And ink ribbons are scarce enough to make you just not want to save. So being sent back a huge chunk from a potential death is actually pretty likely. And oftentimes running against the wall didn't work in such tight places, so I was forced to go find ammo or explore a different area. Which is annoying, but since the game is survival horror and resource management is a main mechanic, I see no issues here. Did a lot of running, did a lot of dying, entering the same rooms. It gets tedious, but it's kind of unavoidable in a game like this, especially on your first playthrough, but tolerable nonetheless. This was not in vain though, as I've accumulated the knowledge necessary to infer what my next objectives are. I need an armor key, a sword key, and a helmet key. I will admit I almost looked up a guide in what is presumably the first 30 minutes. Now, by this point I had gone everywhere I could, except downstairs in the room where the 3 zombies roam. Since I didn't have much of a choice, I killed them and went downstairs. Downstairs I got bit by a zombie, and honestly I would forget about the rewind feature until I died, so a lot of times I just took the hit. No thanks to these janky ass controls, of course. Down the stairs there's an immediate door. I enter it.
Whoa! What is it?
What? Oh! Oh no!
Here we meet Rebecca, and she's hiding here from zombies. She's startled by us and sprays us with something, I don't know. I'd say it's pepper spray, but Chris did not react like it was, and if it is, then god fucking damn, no wonder bro went on to punch freaking boulders. Rebecca seems apologetic though. I believe she didn't mean to do that. Rebecca and Chris introduce themselves, and Rebecca explains that she ran into the mansion after the helicopter made a forced landing. She implies that she's not sure what happened to the rest of her team. Chris reassures her that there's nothing she could have done. For those who are unaware of who Rebecca is, she's the sole survivor of Bravo team, who was sent here to investigate the disappearances. She herself is relatively new to the field, as she has only been on the team for a month prior to this incident. When her helicopter went down, she ran into the house, and based on the fact that we see the other Bravo team members scattered around, we can assume that they also made the same decision, but weren't able to escape the fate that befell them. Rebecca inquires on what could have possibly went wrong with the helicopter, as she mentions that she had just serviced it not long ago, leaving us with an interesting story beat to ponder. What caused their helicopter to go down? One thing of note that I personally appreciate is that this game has idle animations, and small glimpses of attention to detail that arises and grows into what we see into future games. When Chris stands still, he taps his gun on his shoulder, or his foot. And unfortunately I found that the animations for Rebecca aren't as consistent as the few times we see her throughout the game. Meaning, now she follows your movements with her head, but that isn't the case the next time we see her. Nonetheless, I appreciate the effort. On the desk I grabbed the sword key, which I didn't inspect at the time, so it was just called mansion key. Interacting with Rebecca once more, she expresses concern for everybody.
I wonder...
Rebecca, buddy, I got news for you. After I try and leave the room, she asks if she can come with me. I say yes, and she tells me to go ahead because she's going to prepare something. Given that the shelf harbors vitamins and serum, we can presume that it's something medicinal in nature, especially since Rebecca is a combat medic. However, I'm unsure what happens if you say no. Leaving the room and taking a right, we see 2 doors, only one of which is accessible. It leads to another series of hallways with green walls. The enemy placement here is a proper challenge. I take a right and enter the door on my right. Using the sword key I just acquired from the room, I enter. In here I find more resources and a document. But just as I'm about to read the document, I get ambushed by a zombie. document on the desk is labeled Keeper's Diary. It's written in the first person and mentions a couple of researchers, Elias and Steve, as well as a guard named Scott. Now it seems to tell a story over the course of a few days. A high-ranking researcher made the Keeper take care of one of the enemies that we see later in the game, described as a gorilla with no skin and in nature chooses to play with its food. Truly a horrifying creature to say the least, but not for the Keeper, as it seems that it's his job to take care of these different kinds of animals. The following day, Scott woke the Keeper up at 5 a.m. He told him to put on a protection suit, and the Keeper mentioned that there was an accident in the lab. The Keeper speaks of their skin growing musty and itchy. By way of revenge, I didn't feed the dogs today. The diary recounts the symptoms of an infection and his treatment, starting with an itch and the corruption of the mind, evident by him wanting to get revenge on the dogs, but on second thought he might just be a dick. However, this may infer that the dogs did something, which my buddy pointed out it's likely that he was bitten by the dog. It would explain why the Keeper is infected despite having a protection suit on. Their back was swollen, so they went to the medical room to seek treatment. The doctor told them that the protection suit wasn't necessary anymore. The next day, their symptoms got worse. Blisters started to arise and their limbs began to stop working. Furthermore, they let the dogs escape, and that the higher-ups will be upset about it. The next day, the Keeper wants to leave the facility to see what is presumably one of his loved ones, but he was stopped by a guard and told that no one is allowed to leave. He can't make a phone call either. On the next day, he mentions that someone was executed for trying to escape. His symptoms are getting worse, and now pieces of rotten flesh are coming off. On his last days, the mind seems to have fallen away, but retains enough human to write a note, I guess. Scott came to check on him or something. I don't really know why. Who knows why Scott came to him? But it looks like he didn't survive the encounter. Itchy tasty. So let's take a look at what else this letter could imply. There seems to be a lab. For what? We don't know yet, but the research must be in relation to animals, or rather the mutation of them. Based on the fact that we are in a mansion, it's plausible to say that the mansion provided residency to the researchers of said lab. There was an accident. This accident seems to be at the root of all of this. Scott tells the Keeper to put on a protection suit. He has one on himself. However, the Keeper is already infected. Speculatively, the dogs bit him. He then degrades into a zombie and still tries to go home. A guard says he's not allowed, and ironically, it's not such a bad thing because, well, yeah, someone is killed for trying to escape. Scott comes to check on the Keeper and gets eaten. Itchy tasty. I suspect the game will provide us with further context as to what this accident was and what actually happened there. Also, why they felt the need to execute people for trying to escape. What exactly are they prisoners of? We continue forward. I run around and kill a zombie. Returning to the dining room hallway, I'm now able to unlock the red door since I've acquired the sword key. Ah yes, a bar, as well as a piano and such a gloomy aesthetic. Moving this cupboard aside, we can... Cupboard? Shelf? I don't know. Moving this cupboard aside, we can find a piece of music. Side note, you cannot push this shelf from its right side. Just don't do it. It'll save you a lot of... Trying to play this music, Chris has no bars. Unfortunately, I'm not mad with the skills, so Rebecca pops up and figures she could flex on me. I let her.
Wait, what is that?
No bars. She asks if she could practice. And this is the problem. I'm into damage chicks that would rather practice Moonlight Sonata than pay attention to the impending doom that surrounds them. I leave her to practice the piano and head back over to the right side of the house. With the sword key, I can access the locked door within the blue room. It is now useless. I progress forward and get jump scared by a dog. These ugly ass dogs, bro. Instead of killing the dogs, I just run past him, and I progress further until I enter a bathroom. And here all you can find is a small key after draining the tub. Then one of the next rooms you can enter, there's a shotgun, but you can't grab the shotgun or else a trap will be set off. This will squash you unless you go and put the shotgun back. I knew what to do, so I left the shotgun. I tried to find an upscaled photo of this tapestry. It looks badass, so if anyone knows if it exists, please let me know. After heading back out the door, I enter the room on the opposite wall. Here we have a puzzle room. This puzzle is actually fairly simple. The goal is to press the switches in order, according to each of the paintings.
From cradle to grave is the puzzle hint, starting with newborn, infant, lively boy, young man, middle-aged, old man, end of life. After pressing the switch, the painting will fall off the wall and reveal to us a star crest. This item will be used to get us outside of the mansion. Leaving the room and going straight ahead leads outside. I deposit the star crest immediately. I traveled upstairs to learn that the zombies do not know how to use the stairs. In fact, they are void of the ability completely. After running through the game for a while, I remembered Rebecca was playing the piano, so I returned to her. It seems she's finally got it down.
Chris! Chris! You like it?
Oh, that was great.
We immediately go and grab the emblem from the dining room that just so happens to be a wooden placeholder. This is so that we don't get trapped in this room when we grab the gold emblem. I interact with Rebecca and she seems to be having trouble hiding that she is a skinwalker. Placing the golden emblem moves the grandfather clock. We've now acquired the shield key. Back into the series of green hallways. There are 2 rooms here that we haven't explored. I go back to grab the blue gemstone and return here. Past the zombie on the right is a room. In the room is a tiger statue. The goal is to fit gemstones into its eye sockets, but we don't need both of them right now, so we can just grab the item that it gives us for now, which happens to be the wind crest. We hit a safe room so we can grab the earth we found earlier. Heading back to the other room connected to these hallways is home to hentai. Hello hentai. Kill hentai with herbicide. On the wall we finally obtain the armor key, which means access to more rooms. Now heading back out these hallways, we can now access the locked door. The door to our right is home to the broken shotgun, and you can take it back to the room with the trap and replace it with the real shotgun. If your inventory is full, however, you need to free up an item slot. Why? Oh, that's just how the game works. Definitely a fundamental flaw in my opinion. Like, just let me replace the fucking shotgun. I decided to use the armor key everywhere, so I ran back to the main room and used the armor key on the left door of the right side on the first floor. I didn't go in though. Instead I went upstairs to the correlating door and into the door on the right. This leads you through another hallway leading to a door with a zombie snake boss fight, which admittedly is pretty badass. I then used a shield key to open the door. Now you can ward this thing off if you're equipped enough, or by god ballsy enough to use a knife. I decided not to though, so I just ran and grabbed the item in the back of the room, because fuck that noise. He does make it difficult. The item back here is the wind crest. We escaped the room. Not so easily though. In fact, we end up getting poisoned. Rebecca feels this internally and uses instant transmission right outside the door to immediately beckon to our aid. I actually have no idea what Rebecca is doing when she's not with us, but regardless she shows up when needed, and this time it's with the ability to play as her. Now, as Rebecca we go to the other side of the map, grab some medicine from the safe room, and run all the way back and give it to Chris. I just smacked my knee. Or maybe it's turbulence. For some reason Rebecca's animation stops here. I don't know why. Anyhow, I turn around and explore the singular other room attached to this hallway, though it's too dark to see anything, so I leave. I remember the blue door with the armor carving. For this door you need the armor key. Inside will be a very simple puzzle. Push the statues over the grate so that the poison gas doesn't escape through them while you press the button. Completing this puzzle will give you the final crest, the Sun Crest. We use the armor key to open up the door on the corridor above the safe room. It is no longer useful. And here are 2 separate rooms. In one you can find a lighter, and in the other you can find another letter written by another researcher. It seems to be directed at their beloved, Alma. He seems to be under the impression that this letter was going to be shipped out. Unfortunately, Alma hasn't seen this letter as of now. He says that he wasn't allowed to talk to her because of someone in sunglasses, which we all suspect to be you-know-who, though as of now we can't be sure of anything. Rather than this serving as a way to console a loved one, it serves to provide us lore instead. The researcher explains that he was headhunted by a pharmaceutical company that he now works for. He also mentions an accident in the lab, just as the Keeper did. However, he provides more context. In the lab, they were studying a virus, and it managed to escape. This is what caused everyone here to become the living dead. He goes on to explain that the virus takes away all things human from whoever is infected. The researcher sees no way out and decides to game end himself within an hour of writing this note. So now we have some semblance of who could be responsible for all this. Seems like a pharmaceutical company headhunted the researchers that live here. It's not so far-fetched that a pharmaceutical company is researching a virus, but where it gets crazy is that there's research on animals. People can't leave the mansion, and something described as a gorilla without any skin, like what the hell is that? On the wall is some fishing lures with a switch in the frame. Flipping the switch will drain the water from the tank. Now we can move the fish tank to the right and push the closet forward to reveal some shells. I grab them and move on. Heading back out into the hallway, we can now use the lighter we found to light the fireplace in the room at the end of the hallway. Above the fireplace is a map that appears. This is a map of the second floor. After a good amount of running around, I finally decided to head outside. Before I get outside, there's another room. Inside of it, I use a ladder to grab a crank. I head outside and kill some dogs through trials and tribulation. Moving forward, we come across a dam that's holding in water. We use the crank to drain the water and make our way across. Snakes fall from the sky, but they are no threat. I ride the elevator down. I run past some more dogs and move forward. Down here is another elevator, but I need a battery to access it. There's also an item stuck in the waterfall, which I don't think I ever managed to get. I move forward through a metal fence. The only way to go is onward onto the guardhouse. I make my way there after evading a couple of dogs. Immediately we're met with a gargoyle. This will be useful in a moment. Moving forward, I enter the door on the left. Inside is a dorm room, or yeah, that's what I'll call it. I check the dorm room bathroom and discover a key labeled the C room key in the bathtub. I left the bathroom, and after some dying, I left the room and entered the room directly across, which should have been my first option. I make some room for some items as well as restock on some resources. Back into the other room, I went to kill a couple zombies. I also found a red book. Inspecting it further shows that it's blank. After leaving, I went through the double red doors at the end of the hallway and saw a spider on the ceiling. I said fuck no and left. After taking a turn, a tentacle wrapped around my neck. This is Hentai's mother, Doujinshi. To stop this from happening, you must move the gargoyle over the hole. I push forward and enter another room with 3 doors and some bees. The bees are guarding a dormitory key. Going back outside this room and down the hallway is dorm room 2. The dormitory key accesses this room, which I didn't immediately figure out, so I ran for a good amount of time before figuring out what to do. Then I realized I had a couple keys and chose to inspect one. The dorm key was labeled O2. After learning this, I ran back to dorm 2 and entered it. The key is discarded. In the bathroom is a zombie and a clip. I kill the zombie and take the clip. Outside in the room is a map on the wall as well as a document. The document is about an infected plant called Plant 42, lying on the bed. This letter was written 4 days after the accident in the lab. It talks of a plant that was infected by a virus, which we now know to be called the T virus. I'll hold off on what the T stands for now. As opposed to other plants, this plant reacted differently, completely changing shape and size to the point where it is unrecognizable. The letter explains that the plant has intelligence to the point where it can sense movement and captures its prey, as well as locks the door with its vines while eating or sleeping. Now it seems that the reason the plant grew so large so fast is because its roots dip into the basement. Down there was a water tank. When the accident happened, a scientist went mad and destroyed it. Now the basement is filled with water, and it's surmised that some chemicals mixed with the water and provided Plant 42 with the ability to grow exponentially. Plant 42 also gets its nutrition from its vines. Once it senses movement, it'll use its vine to suppress you and suck up your blood. Pretty sure Plant 42 is what wrapped its vine around my neck. The letter's valediction tells us it was written by a researcher named Henry Sart, and thanks to his research we understand the effects of Plant 42. More importantly, however, we get the date that the letter was written, May 21st, 1998. As we know already, the letter was written 4 days after the accident, meaning the exact day of the accident was May 17th, 1998. After reading the document, I noticed something under the closet, so I moved them both out of the way and it reveals a ladder. Before going down the ladder, I grab some herbs for anything unexpected. Down the ladder I go. Before we can progress, I have to move some boxes to create a platform to walk across. After getting across, we progress through the double doors at the end of the hallway, and are met with a room full of water up to the waist. Here's when my ability to go off roughly what the remake has you do starts to plateau. There are freaking sharks in this water. This is obviously the tank that the mad scientist broke, because no moderately chill scientist would do this. Since I'm being chased by said sharks, I run around in a panic and leave the room. After re-entering, I go into the door immediately to my right. In this room are the roots of Plant 42, as well as a nutsack hanging off the wall. Not yet can I do anything. So I leave the room and go directly ahead, and am met with 2 doors, both locked, but I have the Kroom key, which allows me to enter the door on the left. The key is now useless. In the room next to the flashing light, there's a lever. I pull the lever and it drains the water. Draining the water reveals a button on the wall. Pressing the button will open the other locked door. Before I enter that room, I come to inspect the sharks that are completely void of the ability to flop, so they are stuck stationary. They can't do anything, but they follow my movements, so that's pretty funny. In the room I just unlocked, there was some ammo, and it gave me the most ammo I've ever had in the game so far. Everything else in here is wet and useless. But I find a dorm key which belongs to room 3. Why is it here? I'm sure you can ask that question for almost every item in this game, and one sentence wouldn't be any more than the other. I return back to the dorm and head to room 3. The key is now useless. Inside room 3, there's nothing but a clip in the bathroom. There's a bookcase with a mismatched placed book. Take the book out. The book is labeled V-Jolt Report. It explains that Plant 42 produces a countertoxin which can be used to kill it. This is called V-Jolt. It provides us with a formula. After placing the red book down, a shelf moves out of the way and reveals a door. This room leads directly to the Plant 42. And this is probably the most silly thing in the game. Oh. Why did you just walk up to it, bruh? Huh? Alright. Alright, I'm just gonna assume that's hardware limitations. just walk into it.
Rebecca, no, it's no use. The roots of it are in the basement. You could... Whoa!
Chris!
Take this file with you. Use the information in it in order to make the potion and kill the root. Rebecca, please.
What the hell?
Chris! Don't die!
I mean, I'll take any excuse to play as waifu, but I'm starting to think that Chris was waiting for his moment to riz. Bro's got the damsel in distress riz. I ran back down to the shark room as Rebecca and back into the room with the plant roots. After getting down here, I realized I didn't do what I needed to, so I returned to the room where we see the bees. The door immediately available to us has a keypad that requires a passcode, and quite honestly, this might be the hardest puzzle in the game. My first impression was that I didn't need a code because of how it seemed to work. I figured my extremely high IQ that rivals the likes of Einstein would be able to figure this out. But I sat here for a while, thinking I had it, but no, this thing did not budge. I'd have a singular light left and it would just go downhill. Now I'm teetering on whether or not this puzzle is dog shit, because there is in fact a code, but the way you discover this code is very bizarre. Going back to the bar where the two spiders were and inspect the end of the pool table. Yes, the end that isn't even visible. This will give you the code to the door. Mine happened to be 12:45. I think the pool sticks point in this direction as well, as in like a clock. But it's definitely not straightforward because the clock connection is kind of random, at least in my opinion. So is having to interact with this dial. Like, you can't even see it. If I didn't look this up, I'd been stumped for a lot longer. Yes, I googled this. Whatever though. We get the code and use it to get into the room. Now our V-Jolt report comes in handy. Depending on who you are, this will either seem very difficult or very easy. Mainly because some people just don't like to read. And I do wonder how you managed to complete this game without it if you didn't read. I digress. The puzzle here is simple math. Just grab the jars off the shelf and fill them up. Mix them according to the formula on the last page of the V-Jolt report, and if you've done it right, you'll make V-Jolt, which we can then take back to the plant roots and use it to kill the roots of plant 42. Considering how long this took, I don't understand how Chris is still alive, but alright. After killing the roots, we immediately switch back to Chris, and then we end up having to kill the plant 42 anyway. I mean, doujinshi. I was unsure whether or not my bullets were even working, but they were, so I ran around for a bit and came back with a shotgun and killed it. In the fireplace, there's a final mansion key. After inspecting this key, we find that it is the helmet key. Leaving the room, Rebecca is glad that we are okay. Chris makes the cheesiest joke of all time.
Yeah, so much for him. We got to the root of the problem.
Rebecca has another member's radio. A rescue helicopter is trying to make contact. It's broken, so we can't hear him, but he can hear us. Interacting with Rebecca, she tells you that she can heal us. I'm not sure how long this is the case, but for now she can heal your wounds. She mentions that all of the medicine here is from Umbrella. Chris is unaware of what Umbrella is, so Rebecca provides an explanation.
Most of these medicines are from Umbrella.
What's Umbrella?
Don't you know? It's a large-scale pharmaceutical company based in Raccoon City.
Oh, I see.
That's right, folks. Umbrella is a pharmaceutical company. Considering the note we found earlier stating that Martin had been headhunted by a pharmaceutical company, putting two and two together, logically we can come to the conclusion that Umbrella is responsible for pretty much everything here. Heading back out to the main hall, we hear some gunshots. After hitting the corner, we see that it's Wesker.
Wesker!
Chris, you're alive.
My words exactly. Where's Jill? Aren't you with Jill?
I'm sorry. We were attacked by a strange monster. I lost track of her while we were scouting around. I hope she's okay.
I see. Well, it's not your fault. This place is crazy. If we stay here, all of us will end up dead. What should we do, Wesker?
We have to complete this mission. Whether we escape or stay and look for Jill, we don't have many bullets left, and we can't even protect ourselves. We're still in trouble. Chris, there are a lot of locked rooms in that house. Check them out one more time. There must be a place to hide safely. I'll look around the house a little more.
Okay.
Let's get going.
Despite losing Jill somewhere, Wesker thinks that we should complete the mission and tells us to go check out the mansion once more. Moving outside, we hear Brad on the radio. After trying to make contact, we're reminded that the radio is broken. Since the helmet key is the final key, I go back into the mansion and use it to open the rest of the doors. Upon entering the mansion, I met with a new enemy who followed us in. Aside from this one, they seem to replace most of the zombie placements as there's no more zombies residing inside the house. Unsure what this means exactly, but it's curious nonetheless. After killing it, I use the key to enter a room with a lamp inside. I turn on the lamp and find magnum bullets. Up the stairs from left side safe room is another locked door. Well, a couple, but the one with the passcode I never opened. So I use the key on the door on the left. In here you can get an orange gemstone, as well as some magnum bullets and shotty shells. Push the ladder over to the deer head and turn off the lights. The gem will glisten. Go back up the steps and grab the gem. In this room we also have a document labeled Order. This is pretty interesting. This document is labeled Top Secret. It's also dated July 22nd, 1998, and it's to whoever the head of security department is. Because something called X Day is approaching, they're given 3 orders to complete within the week. The first, to lure STAR members into a lab and have them fight something that's referred to as the BOW, in order to accumulate combat data. I'm unsure what the BOW stands for as of now. The next order being to collect 2 embryos per BOW, excluding the tyrant species. Based on the wording, we can infer that whatever the BOW is animal-like in nature. As of now, I'm unsure if that's the case for whatever the tyrant species is, but we know for certain that the tyrant species is also a BOW. Lastly, they're told to destroy everything here in a way that seems accidental. Since they excluded the tyrant, we can assume they didn't want anyone to learn about that. The letter is signed off by White Umbrella. Absolutely have no idea who the hell White Umbrella is. After reading this letter, we learn that we've been lured here on purpose, or rather Bravo team was lured here to gather combat data. What the combat data would be used for? Well, that beats me. If STARS was lured here on purpose, then it's likely that the groups of zombies that attacked those families was a manufactured scenario. But why? Just to draw our attention? If that's the case, then it makes you wonder what kind of sick people are at the head of this research. It makes you worry about what X Day could possibly mean. Giving it extra thought, it is kind of bizarre that things have been occasional enough to make the newspapers, but not enough to garner the attention of the public and cause widespread panic. It makes sense when you consider that those events could be experiments. The idea that these events were cleaned up in a way. Victims killed horribly, but no evidence of the groups of 10 attackers anywhere, which since we now know the attackers to be zombies, but because of that, it doesn't add up completely. 10, I think it was a group of 10 deployed in different areas. That's why murder cases, plural, are able to make the news over a course of time. When in reality, if these zombies were left to run rampant, everyone would notice immediately. It definitely adds up when you consider that these events were monitored, and once Umbrella received the air quotes data they needed, they swooped the zombies up and headed back to base. To me, this is a highly plausible notion. However, we still need more context. After leaving this room, I head over to the tiger statue room and place the gem. Very interesting that the tiger's eye are blue and orange, maybe a reference to Tony the Tiger, which, side note, totally unrelated, but I had some crazy Mandela effect shit going on. For some reason I thought Tony the Tiger had blue stripes. Am I tripping? His nose is blue, but his stripes are not blue. Very bizarre. I have now unlocked the Magnum. I didn't have enough space for it, so I didn't take it. Instead, I ran over to the second floor map room and used the helmet key on the blue door. After stepping in, there seems to be a table and a piano. Interacting with the piano will spawn the Yawn again, the same zombie snake that attacked us earlier. This time it comes through the fire and the flames though. I'm still in my hip hop era, so unfortunately I can't approve. I wasn't in the mood to fight this thing, so I came back later. I ran back to get the Magnum as well as some other resources to prepare. I also wasn't able to grab the red book at first, so I made sure to do that as well. Inside the Doom Book 1 was the Eagle Medal. This will come in handy later. After running around some more and grabbing some more resources, I returned to the Yawn. And now it's time for me to discuss how dog shit this fight was. I died a lot, very many times. I did not enjoy this one bit, not at all. The room is tight, well, which is, of course, the room is tight. And oh my god, like the game's
itself works against you so much here. And I think it just doesn't allow for this fight to be as ambitious as it is, because there's just no way to avoid its attacks. Like, it literally comes down to actual attrition. And if you don't have the shotgun, which may or may not do more damage, you're not going to have a good time. I've seen people online do it, and I shit you not, it felt like the only way to beat this thing was like by RNG crits, because the amount of times I shot him to kill him wasn't consistent. And there's even a dude online who beat it in like a minute despite having the same kind of trouble I was. It feels like this boss just has to choose whether or not to be nice to you. And product of its time or not, I do not think this boss fight is good by any means. Fire Zombie Snake is a pretty awesome concept every time though. I ended up giving up because I was just in disbelief that I even had to do this shit, which means I proceeded to waste a lot of my time running around doing random shit because I hoped there was another goal. And boy did I do some running. Eventually I realized that there are no more goals anywhere but the Yawn. So I go and try again. Since I was low on herbs, I continued to die until I went to go and grab more. And I still couldn't accept that this is what I had to do, so I ran around again to the other side of the map because that's where I can find herb. And I had to return to fight it again. And he will eat you in one go if you're at low health, which is very annoying. Sure, I suck at the game, okay? I admit. But this boss fight is trash. I finally kill it with magnum bullets, which makes no sense because I've dumped all my magnum bullets into it already. But whatever, it's over now. I can finally jump down the hole that the Yawn created. Down here we find a trapdoor labeled Full Metal Prison, and I cannot figure out why this is just in some unknown secluded hole with no doors, but I guess the developers were getting tired of developing the game. I enter, and down here is a series of hallways and some zombies, as well as some ammo. Progressing forward, we meet a kitchen. In fact, it's the kitchen. Going through the door, we get a cutscene. Something is approaching, and apparently he knows how to open doors.
I don't like how you guys remember how to use door names.
It turned out to be a zombie, which I was worried that it was one of those lizard thingies, considering that's the only thing that we've seen in the house. There's an elevator, so I go down the elevator. Kill a zombie, grab some more resources, and go through the blue double door at the end of the hall. Inside are some more zombies, and what seems to be a library. Looking around some more, we find a scrapbook that recalls news events. The scrapbook contains some articles from what looks to be two separate newspaper outlets. The first article was published May 27th, 1998, 10 days after the accident in the lab. It talks about an animal attack and a body being found in the river. The body appears to have been mutilated by some kind of animal. The police assumed the victim was attacked by a grizzly based on the bite marks, and used the hiking boot on her foot to infer that she was in the Arklay Mountains and fell into the river. The next article is by Raccoon Weekly, published June 16, 1998. There have been sightings of what resemble monsters in the Arklay Mountains. They're noted to be about the same size as big dogs and run in packs. It says that they're very hard to hurt and they won't bother you unless woken up. The question is, how would an ordinary hiker accumulate this knowledge and survive? The last article is again from Raccoon Times and published on July 9th, 1998, which is within days of us arriving here. Because of successive disasters, they blocked access to the Arklay Mountains as a whole, essentially trapping us STARS members in as well as any other survivors. Raccoon Times seems to be an unbiased news source, delivering us straight facts. The article is merely providing a description of the cases. The article from Raccoon Weekly seems kind of bizarre in of itself. It's either a skeptic paper, or I will go as far as to say that Raccoon Weekly is a biased paper and might be backed by Umbrella as a means to manipulate the media, which is plausible when you consider that biased media can be often persuaded by money. And again I ask, what are the odds that your ordinary hiker can figure this information out? I think it's very likely that this article was meant to serve as a reverse psychology in order to lure hikers out there in the first place, with the purpose of gathering some data. Maybe it's a stretch. Past the scrapbook is a door that leads into another part of the library. In here we find a movable statue and a light. The light shows off the position to put the statue. I push the statue into position and press the bosom button. This moves the bookshelf to the side, revealing a desk. On the desk is a floppy disk. This will become useful later. Returning to the scrapbook and continuing towards the wall, we find a movable cupboard. I move it and reveal a door. In here is an ink ribbon and some ammo. Directly ahead is a window. Outside the window we can see a helicopter pad. That is now our goal. Leaving the library and going to the other end of the hall, we find another door. Go through it and we'll get a battery, as well as some shells. Leaving the room and hitting a right, we find another branch of hallway. And at the end is another door. Going through it, we're met with a zombie and some herbs on the ground. Further down the hall, bro is chowing down next to a door. This is another door that I never opened. I go back up the elevator and outside. I take the battery and head back outside to the courtyard. Down the damn elevator will be another elevator that leads back to the main pathway where we first enter outside. Now we couldn't power this elevator before we had the battery. Now that we can, we use the crank to stop the water from flowing again. Then head back down the elevator to see that the water has indeed stopped. Because of this, we can now go down a ladder that is now revealed to us. Well, we're here. Is this dog shit piercing your eyes yet? This is what I was talking about. And it really is just this section. The caves were just very jarring to look at, and quite frankly I kind of hated it. Aside from that, it probably is the most linear section of the game. Down the ladder there's an immediate door to the left. I go through the door and there's a flamethrower to the right. I grab it and it locks the door behind me. I go left and through the door at the end of the hall, which leads me to a room that eventually circles back, so it wouldn't have mattered if I had went right instead. Moving directly ahead, we find a power generator, but it's not working. The only thing of significance here are the resources, a spray and some shells. Venturing forward, we find a singular branching room. Going into it, the game goes into a cutscene and we find Enrico, the vice captain of STARS. I got that off the wiki because I had no idea who the fuck that even was. Wait, what the fuck just happened?
Rico!
Enrico? I don't remember being...
Don't come any closer, Chris.
Wait, what happened?
Double crosser!
Don't!
Hell. Umbrella.
You shoot yourself in the head and die while saying...
Who is it? Is someone there?
What the fuck?
Double crosser? What did he mean by that?
All hail Umbrella. Enrico.
He seems quite injured and says not to come any closer. He calls us a double crosser, or so we think, until Enrico raises his gun to shoot, but he gets shot by a third party, and dies with his last words being, "All hail Umbrella." At least I think so. The hardware and Chris's reaction made this scene very confusing at first, so I thought this nigga shot himself in the head and still managed to get words out. But no. Someone behind us shot Enrico, and the gunshot was so loud because of how close quarters we are that it knocked Chris out of his senses. So in his mind, the bullet came out of thin air.
Who is it? Is someone there?
I don't know, Chris. Is someone there? We take Enrico's ammo because he doesn't need it anymore. Finally, we can use the flamethrower, which is, it's alright. Using it is the only reason I noticed that the lizard-like enemy strafes around you so much, but it does work. On our way out, we find a crank. This is the hexagonal crank. Hexagonal crank. I'm gonna say hexagonal. For some reason, the game didn't tell me to discard the other one, so I suspected it'd have another use, but I never found it. So I had to leave it there, because my inventory was full. So I went to put the flamethrower back because I ran out of fuel for it. Afterward, I ran back to grab the crank, but now without taking some damage. Once that was over, I was done with the room, so I left. Moving forward, there was a typewriter, so I thought it was a good idea to save here. I then made a monumentally large mistake. I had no ink ribbon, so, you know, no big deal. My mind just blundered and I'm such an idiot for this. I meant to overwrite my save, but instead I just loaded it. Meaning all of that gameplay was gone and I had to do it all over again. Literally the whole stream, an hour and 20 freaking minutes. I went through the 5 stages of grief and then just decided to end the stream.
You know what? You do have an ink ribbon. Why don't we do this? Bro, there's no way I just did that. No way I just did that. Oh my god, I want to fucking kill myself. Oh, that means I have to kill the snake again. Oh, that's so fucking painful. I mean, realistically, I'm not really that mad about it, honestly, but that hurts. That fucking hurts. That fucking hurts. That hurts so much. I'm ending stream.
All's not lost though. I came back 2 days later, ready to finish up. After returning to the spot, I progressed forward. There's a gap in the ground. I used a hexagonal crank to move a portion of the room itself, allowing me to walk across what was just the ceiling. Through the door, we come across another flamethrower and a boulder. And unfortunately, Chris has not yet acquired the ability to punch boulders. After walking up to it and moving away, it starts to roll after me. I run and take cover. Behind the boulder, there are some magnum bullets, and a hunker creeps out. I kill it. The boulder smashed a hole in the wall, and through it are some double doors. Through the double doors is a giant spider, and behind it is another set of double doors, but they have webs on them. I didn't want to deal with the spiders, so I went and grabbed the flamethrower and used it to burn off the webs, but not before seeing what this shiny is. It turned out to be a combat knife, which I'd hope is better than the one I have, but I don't think it is, so I didn't grab it because I literally did not need it. Through the new set of double doors, there's a safe room to our left, and a frame to slot the flamethrower to our far right. Doing this unlocks the door right next to it. In the safe room, I prepare. Leaving the room, I get ambushed by snakes. I continue forward through the door after placing the flamethrower. To our left is an elevator. Going in the opposite direction, we find another boulder, as well as a place to slot the crank. I bait the boulder and take cover. Behind it is the map of underground, and another floppy disk. Across from where we take cover is another crank hole. I slot the crank in the hole in the same animation as the first plays, but this time it reveals a door. Through the door is a statue to push. The goal is to move it over the pressure plate. First you must push the statue into position, and you then use the crank to push it outward from the wall. After sliding the statue over the pressure plate, this will open a slit in the wall that gives us Doom Book 2, again titled Eagle of East, Wolf of West, but this time in blue. Inside is the wolf metal. Going up the elevator, we're outside again. Outside we find a pond, or whatever this is. I don't know what this is. Using the eagle metal and wolf metal, we drain the water. This reveals some stairs leading down to an elevator. Down we go. We have finally reached the lab. Down here we only have the option to go further down the ladder because the double doors ahead of us will only open in case of emergency. So down the ladder I go. I kill a zombie. Around the corner is a set of double doors and a desk with a floppy disk on it. The door is locked. Down the stairs we see another zombie variant. It acts like a zombie, but it looks and sounds differently. I go through the door on my right and enter the door on my left. I am now in a room with 2 switches and a painting. There is also a document labeled Researcher's Letter. It's to someone with the name Ada. The writer of the letter seems to be infected and is explaining to Ada how to escape the facility. Out of everyone here, Ada may be the only survivor of the Arclay Mountains as a whole. The researcher wants to make this public, and the only way to do it is through Ada. He provides her with instructions. First, grab something in the visual data room. Then, go to the power room and operate something called the triggering system. Before she can do anything, the letter also mentions a terminal that needs a login password, the login being the researcher's name, which we learn to be John, and Ada's name is the password. Maybe it's a stretch, but it seems John and Ada were close in a way, at least close enough for him to want Ada to survive, as well as trusting her to make this public. I say this because when you consider the ulterior motives of the company, you'll also wonder how many researchers were in on it themselves, if any at all. To open the visual data room, you'll have to enter another password after logging in. John pleads to Ada that she kill him herself. At the end of the letter, we get a password, which is a series of symbols. These same symbols appear on the painting when only one light is on. Turning both on, we can correlate the symbols with the letters and get our password. Furthermore, using the letter's instructions, we too can escape through what we can assume was the same way Ada did. Around the room there are a couple switches. One switch is the red, the other is blue. The blue one is on the wall behind the movable shelf. Inspecting the painting on the wall with both light switches on reveals hidden words on the painting. Tree, apple, man, woman. Personally, this may be my favorite puzzle in the game. I didn't figure it out immediately, so I left the room and explored some more. Leaving the room and going down the hall, we find 2 locked doors, one that requires 3 passcodes. There's also another locked door in this hallway. This is when the floppy disks come in. Now we have to find a passcode extractor to actually use them on. Moving back out, we find that every door is locked, all besides the terminal room, which is around the pathway. In here we find a computer and a slide cartridge on the floor. Using the computer, we input the login. John, then Ada.
So do we still not know what the fuck Ada was doing to this day?
This gives us the ability to unlock the door on B3, which is the same floor we're on. Trying to unlock the door on B2 will deny you permission, unless you put in the password, which I hadn't figured out at the time, so I went to the door I just unlocked. Here are some zombies. I kill them and progress. On the wall is a fax that gives us more context surrounding the situation. It's to the general manager of the sanitation division, and it's from the Special Committee on Disasters Raccoon Special Research Department. Scoters, that's a fucking mouthful. The message is meant to be destroyed after it was read, but we're reading it now, so I don't know. The committee says they've conducted a field survey and that the situation, which we'll now be calling the T-virus outbreak, is even worse than the news reports, noting that the damage done is considerably greater than thought before. As of the writing of this letter, the committee believed that a bit more than half of the researchers had been infected by the T-virus, and that all of the researchers were showing symptoms. After playing through the game, we know that unless they escaped, which you literally couldn't, then pretty much everyone here was infected and died to the T-virus. This could mean that whoever Ada is, she may not have been a researcher. Curious. The fax mentions that their special security squad had nearly been wiped out. Despite this, their security operation is still active. However, because the security squad took a major hit, crucial information was allowed to make its way to outsiders. Note that it says outsiders and not the public. Furthermore, it explains that many research subjects escaped and can't be controlled. Coincidentally, these events mean that their research was actually successful, and whoever is behind all this finds this situation to be serendipitous in a way, with the only downside being that this information could escape to the public and press releases. The outbreak has reached a point where they'll find covering up the situation difficult to attain, especially since the police department and STARS have pretty much been on top of the situation. In the corner on a desk is a password extractor. I use a floppy disk on the password extractor and get a phrase from the Bible in return. On the wall behind us, we see a poster that says Excite 1998. I tried to find a high-res photo and it does exist, but not officially. I leave the room and slot the passcode. Now to repeat the process elsewhere with another passcode extractor, because each extractor can only be used once. Now I had no other option but to hop back on the terminal and open the door on B2. Since I hadn't figured out the password yet, I wandered around a bunch, which was fine because I needed to grab the other floppy disks. Eventually I did realize that I needed to go hop back on the computer, to which I then fiddled around on it. At first I thought the words on the painting were more login and passwords, so I tried apple tree, and vice versa. Didn't work. I did the same with man and woman. Didn't work. Then it finally occurred to me. So I ran back to the painting and deciphered the symbols to the corresponding letters. The password spells out mole, which I believe is actually relative to the greater context of the story. Based on what we've read in the letter, John wrote about exposing this information to the public. We can assume that the mole was actually John. I'd say Ada as well, but we don't have enough context to say that for sure. Perhaps our double crosser also fits this criteria. However, I argue against this and you'll see why later. I head back to the computer and re-enter both John and Ada. Once it gives me the option to input another password, I type mole. It works. Permission granted. We now have access to the double doors on B2. So I leave the room and head back upstairs into the double doors, aka the visual data room, but not before encountering the only bug in the game I've experienced. Entering the room, there isn't much to do. but there is a file labeled security system, which just explains the security procedures for the facility. This gives us context into the exact reason that the researcher we heard of earlier was shot, who was seen leaving without a security consultant or tried to escape through the helicopter port. And the reason they were cautious is because of the previous informational leaks, thanks to our moles. Giving it more thought, this mole must have been working with what the committee refers to as the outsiders. It makes sense why they didn't let that researcher go home, even if they didn't believe he would say anything. Word had already got out and someone had already tried to escape. On second thought, it might be because they are infected and they also did not want that information to get out. It seems that the moment things started falling apart, Umbrella sealed everyone's fate, all for the sake of covering up the situation, killing anyone who tried to escape and dooming people to write those notes we found throughout the mansion. Itchy Itchy Scott Kane. The rest of the file goes on to explain the purpose of each floor. B1, the passage to the helicopter. This floor, B2, being home to the visual data room. And basement level 3, which has a prison. Each of these rooms has a security procedure. The people named were supposed to be watching over it. Something of high significance is the mentioning of an A. Wesker. That's right, major reveal. We all knew it was Wesker, come on now. In the document, he's referred to as the consultant researcher, as well as the case for a couple other unknowns it's referring to. According to Google, a consultant researcher's purpose is to design, develop, and maintain sophisticated database structures and systems that effectively and efficiently support data collection, as well as provide input and analysis for multi-focus research progress. It looks like Wesker was actually one of the head researchers based off of this definition. Additionally, with this in mind, we could straight up blame Wesker for luring us here. Not only that, but he was the one collecting data on our fights with whatever a BOW is. No one else could do it. The security team was wiped out, so he was pretty much stalking us throughout the whole game, I think? It would make sense as to why he was able to silence Enrico before he could say anything with perfect convenient timing. Though considering Enrico was in a sorry state, we might be able to chalk this up to a coincidence that we even arrived at this moment, and Enrico was just being hunted by Wesker already. That, or maybe the lizard things hurt him, but that's just speculation. If Wesker is responsible for shooting Enrico, which, come on now, we literally know that he is, then that could indicate that Wesker himself has an ulterior motive. Why else would he silence someone he's working with? Furthermore, one of these consultants has to be present if the virus is going to be used. Since we find this information in the document labeled security system, I think it's fair to speculate that Wesker also plays a security role, with him being directly involved in the T-virus as well as his presence being a security precaution. He can pretty much personally see over any discrepancies that he finds. Bro is kinda goated if we're talking about capabilities, at least intellectually, but granted he was part of STARS before he double-crossed us, so I'd say physically too. And considering that the security op is supposedly still active, it makes me think about what he meant when he said we should finish the Minish. Was his goal only to study us? To collect data? What even is his purpose? Based on that statement, we could at least tell that he did not want us to escape. In fact, with the knowledge that the research here has been successful, he had a good reason to continue the mission as planned. The next pages of the document explain the rest of the rooms on B3. The triple locked door, the power room, which only consultants can enter, and the passcode extractors, one of which we used already. The next page makes us aware of another basement level that we haven't tried yet. Basement level 4. It doesn't tell us much, but we can surmise that the tyrant resides here. Thanks to this document, we have a clear goal to make our way out of here. On the table there is a projector. I can now use a slide cartridge. Our first slide reads Umbrella, Bioorganic Weapon Official Report, which reveals to us the T-virus research subjects. The dogs, MA39 Cerberus, the sharks, FI3 Neptune, the fucking lizard thingy, MA121 Hunter, and lastly, T002 Tyrant. We actually end up seeing another enemy that isn't named here for some reason, so I don't even know what it is. After hearing about this thing through the game, we finally get a gist of what it looks like. It seems to be explained in great detail, but to us players, the text is purposefully incomprehensible. After searching online for these images, I find that you can't find any with readable text other than just a name. The last slide is just a picture of the staff's research and development. Most likely they're all dead. Lastly, for this room, there's a button on the wall. I press it, One of the pillars moves to the side and reveals some books. What these books are about, I don't know. Nevertheless, it doesn't matter, because I get a key. This key will get us into the power room. Going downstairs and straight ahead, we unlock the power room door. The key is now useless. Once I enter, I go into the immediately available door. In here, I gotta push some objects around. A couple boxes over the grates, and the stairs up against the wall. Going up the steps, I can get through the hole in the wall and enter another room. In here, we find a bunch of body bags. Evidently, this room is a morgue. We also find some magnum bullets and a passcode extractor. I extract my passcode. Before progressing, I run back to slot the passcode. And honestly, I probably should have waited, but it doesn't really matter. After running around the corner of the hall, we're met with another set of double doors. I go through and find myself into what seems to be the power room. I see some spooky looking enemies I haven't seen before, so I run for it. These enemies also were not labeled on the slideshow. I come across the power panel that I interact with and use to provide blackout areas. Now the slide did not cover what the hell these things are. I assume this is the gorilla with no skin that we heard about earlier, because otherwise I'd have no idea what the dude was referring to. They're probably the creepiest enemy in the game, and they look so weird. Probably my favorite enemy as well, at least design wise. They have the ability to climb on the ceiling, which you could argue is primate-like. They also leap at you. Running forward, I find the last passcode extractor. But since I'm low on ammo, I just make a run for it and suffer some hits just to leave the room. I keep running, and after getting jumped, I enter another room. The only interactable in here is the power connection switch. I activate the power for the elevator and run back out to the hallway. I go forward, and on my right is the safe room, and here is a bed and desk. I wonder who is living here. Maybe Wesker. After preparing, I leave the safe room and go around the corner to the elevator. It has no power, but there's a switch beside it. After flipping the switch, Rebecca shows up. But before going through the elevator, I remembered I never went through the passcode door, because I figured going up the elevator would progress the story. In here is a jail cell. Interacting with the jail cell, we find that Jill has been captured.
Chris!
Jill!
Oh.
Chris, Wesker, he is...
I know. Shoot, it doesn't open. Look, Jill, wait here. I'll save you.
Okay, I'll wait.
Why does Jill sound like that? The first thing she mentions is Wesker's name, which after thinking about it, I think Wesker grabbed Jill as soon as Chris entered the other room. I just think it's very abnormal for Jill to drop her handgun, and it just doesn't make any sense if all she was doing is running from a threat. That's just not in Jill's character, or I'd say in any Resident Evil protagonist's character. Maybe Ethan, but he barely has any training in RE7. I find that it wouldn't have mattered if I'd went up the elevator because I have to anyway. At least now we know Jill exists and that we should go save her. So I trigger the cutscene with Rebecca and go up the elevator. Another cutscene plays and we're stalked by Albert Wesker himself. And before I say anything, I'm just gonna let this play out and give you my thoughts afterward.
Rebecca, you're safe.
I saw you in the garden. I've caught up with you at last.
Well, I'm glad you're all right. Don't go out alone.
Yes, sir.
Chris, as my subordinate, you have wonderful talent.
I would never work for a company like Umbrella. And Wesker, you were formerly with Umbrella.
What do you mean?
Since when have you been an Umbrella agent? And a traitor to the stars?
Now you're wrong. I was formerly with Umbrella, yes. But now I'm prepared to face anything. Even getting rid of you vigilante stars.
What?
Now, the worst possible situation has occurred. The failure of the experiment created a virus, a biological weapon, polluting the entire lab.
No, the worst happened with the tyrant virus. I lost some of my STARS team members because of it.
You killed them with your own hands. Did you kill Enrico?
Really?
Yeah, like this.
Rebecca!
Don't move. If you do, I'll kill you. Chris, I have something to show you. Now, walk.
Alright, so what is this about? Because I couldn't understand what the fuck he was talking about. Like, he's mad that we call him a traitor? Like, that was just all over the place. What the fuck? Damn, that thing was crazy. Me with 3 days without the Zaza.
That's right. This is the ultimate life form. Tyrant. Chris? Stop it.
Wesker, you're pitiful. This is your savior? You say this failure is your savior?
You can make sure yourself whether Tyrant is a failure or not.
That boy Chris is like, man, this ugly ass thing, what the fuck you talking about, boy? Boy gonna lost his mind.
Go to hell. Jill will join you too.
Well, I don't get why he hates us.
What? Don't come this way! No!
Bruh. Okay. Alright. The fuck?
You can't kill me.
Yeah, you got that right. Ah,
Before
shit.
I let this boss fight play out, let's actually cover this conversation, because my mind is still having trouble wrapping around it. So Wesker starts off by saying that Chris has a talent. Chris responds by saying that he'd never worked for Umbrella, and that Wesker was formerly with Umbrella. Wesker says, what do you mean? What do you mean, what do I mean?
Since when have you been an Umbrella agent? And a traitor to the stars?
Now you're wrong.
About fucking what? He then confirms that Chris is right about him being formerly with Umbrella, and then he says he's prepared to face anything. Okay, so what was Chris wrong about? Hello?
Even getting rid of you vigilante stars.
What do you mean vigilante, bro? What do you mean vigilante? Like, literally, where did you get that word from? Who are you referring to? Because I was under the impression that STARS was a city-sanctioned authority. Am I tripping? Also, why?
What?
Now, the worst possible situation has occurred. The failure of the experiment created a virus, a biological weapon, polluting the entire lab.
Huh? Chris, how did you come up with that? Chris, there's no way there's no way through all of the shit we've just seen that you think this shit was a fucking accident. Maybe the lab pollution, sure, but what failed experiment are you talking about? This whole time, not once. Where did you get this information? What? Please tell me which failed experiment created the virus. What? Like, I'm sure if you know, then it's had to have been mentioned multiple times through the story, right? You know, the fucking bioweapon, which you wouldn't refer to as a bioweapon if that wasn't its purpose. Who the fuck just calls a new virus a bio? Oh, never mind. Wesker responds, no. In bold, by the way.
Biological weapon, polluting the entire lab.
No, the worst happened with the Tyrant virus. I lost.
Nigga, Chris just said this. What? He just said this. There's no way you guys are talking about two separate things right now.
I lost some of my STARS team members because of it.
You mean your vigilante STARS teammates? Who the hell are, bro? Who are the vigilantes? Nigga, are you on coke? Now, to give Wesker the benefit of the doubt, maybe he's rehearsing the story that he has to tell authorities. through method acting. Chris says that Wesker killed him with his own hand.
Did you kill Enrico?
Really?
Chris is the definition of a dense-ass fucking meathead, my fucking god. Yes, Chris. Yes, he killed Enrico. You haven't run into anyone else this whole time but fucking Rebecca. Who are you even referring to, Chris? Wesker, who are you referring to? And Chris, how do you know? Please tell me which star members Wesker killed with his bare hands. You didn't know who killed Enrico, so who do you know? Who did Wesker kill? What are you talking about? Cause it wasn't Bravo Team. Wesker did not kill Bravo Team. They pulled up before you. And both of you niggas are an Alpha Team. So what are we on about? Fucking Delta Team? Okay, that would actually be fair if it was ever mentioned in the fucking story. Okay, let me calm down. Wesker says yes, he killed Enrico. He then shoots Rebecca. She's just standing there with her head looking like a fucking bellend. I love this I love this so much. Wesker tells Chris not to move or he'll kill him. Then he says he wants to show him something and tells him to fucking move. Not even full 10 seconds, my G. Wesker shows up the tyrant in person, and by God does this thing look fucking menacing. It's definitely nightmare fuel to say the least. There's like a certain creepy aesthetic around anything that's like pre-rendered in the 90s. Like I don't know how to explain it. Like maybe it's the low resolution, but like it just definitely makes it more creepy. Chris is standing there like a 5-year-old me looking for a snack in the fridge at 3 a.m. Alright, as if you couldn't tell already, here's where the writing dips in quality. Wesker pays the creature high praise, and Chris laughs. Wesker is genuinely offended. Yeah, bro, you crazy, because what the hell is going on in your head? Chris doesn't approve of the tyrant and talks mad shit.
This is your savior? You say this failure is your savior?
Chris, when the hell did he say that? When did Wesker say this is our savior? Not once did he. It's like there's like bits of dialogue just bitten out of the page, like fucking your dog just tore it up and you're just like, okay, well, it's still the script, so we still have to read off of it, like, okay, even though the half the page is gone, like, whatever. Wesker is very confident, so he releases the tyrant. He tells Chris to go to hell and includes Jill in the mix. Like, the story does not explain why this dude hates us so freaking much. After he says that, this happens. The tyrant now turns its gaze to us. Personally, I'm more worried about that turbulence take off. Now, once again, let us talk about what we just witnessed on this latter half. I'm really not sure what was going on during the production of this game, but it feels like there is an insane amount of dialogue missing in this part. Either that, or maybe the translations got fucked up and the Western voice actors had to work with what they were given. I actually have no clue, but I shit you not, this conversation is virtually incomprehensible. Like, everything they say just doesn't make any sense. I cannot comprehend what information is trying to be conveyed here. Like, I can barely understand. It's like there is no coherence. The things we're saying to each other just don't sound like they're the same conversation. And I'm not even referring to the fact that the audio lines were recorded in different booths. I mean, it literally feels like Chris and Wesker are talking about different things, but responding to each other regardless. It's clear that many voice lines were cut out or something, I don't know. And like, for some reason he gets mad that we call him a traitor. Like, bro, you literally are. And then he says like, bro, what? And then why is he so confident that the tyrant would attack us first? Just had zero regard for his life. Like, bro was making any sense in the first place. Also, why does he hate us? Chris didn't even know what Umbrella was when we first got here, so what is all the hubbub? He came with you to invest. You lured us out here. Now, I understand being mad that he's discovered all of this. I even understand being upset that he laughed at something you like so much. But what is the motive for all this hate? Like, is it just because we're human? Like, bro, god damn. This shit really did need a remake.
Alright. Ah, shit. Can I just leave? It's electronically locked? Where's my merchant and my rocket launcher? Yeah, that's fine. Buddy, alright, I can't see him, so I guess I'll never be able to see. Oh. What? Okay, Is this somehow gonna be worse than Yawn? Okay, I thought this was a boss fight. Free magnum bullets, huh? Yeah, maybe that was a bit too easy. Now I want to speculate on what the Tyrant is, but I think I'm going to save that towards the end of the video. Running over to the Tyrant tank, we can open the door with the terminal right next to it. After we leave, we see that Rebecca survived. Which, fair enough, Rebecca's great, but why didn't he shoot you in the head?
Ha! It seems like this bulletproof jacket is pretty strong.
I see.
How about Captain Wesker?
Yeah, why didn't he shoot you in the head?
Sleeping with the ultimate failure. Hurry up. I want to get out of here.
Rebecca mentions a research file she saw stating that more T-virus research exists throughout the facility, which,
I saw a research
duh.
file in this
But she
lab.
proposes the
It says
idea
a
to blow it
great
to
deal of
smithereens.
research on the Tyrant
I agree.
virus exists right here. We should blow this place up.
You are right.
We are already into it over our heads. Rebecca, can you do it?
Yes, sir. I'll set off a triggering system for a bomb.
Okay. Now we have a chance to escape. See you outside the house. Jill, sorry for making you wait.
Chris! I knew I could trust you.
Let's go. There's no need to stay.
Did the hardware not allow for the hug? Let's go, Jill. Why is she walking? I head back to get Jill, and then the countdown for the bomb starts. We have now entered a solidified trend that future games have also had implemented into them. After freeing Jill, I head back up to B1. Granted, there's now an emergency, so we can go through the double doors. Out to the helicopter. On our way, we get a message from Brad. He's trying one last time to try and save anyone he can find. We need to get his attention.
I have a fuel shortage. Okay, this is the last try. If somebody's alive, please send a sign.
We continue and meet an elevator. Slotting the battery into the elevator triggers a cutscene. The announcer mentions 3 minutes, and 3 minutes appear on a countdown.
There is 3 minutes until explosion. I made it! I set off the triggering system to the bomb!
Great! Rebecca, Brad's up in the helicopter.
Look at those monsters!
Let me take care of them.
Brad,
Chris, get in contact with Brad right away.
what the fuck is this voice acting, bro? Rebecca shows up and proclaims that she's done it. For some reason, Jill and Rebecca both decide to stay zombies, while I contact Brad, which I don't understand why they didn't just come up the elevator. But I got to hear Rebecca make a silly shout, so I think I'm satisfied. After getting out the elevator, I find a box of flares and use them. Brad is now aware and comes to us. Shit, man. Thank you, mine. Is that a smile on your face, young man? Get that shit out there. Finally, we are done with the game. It was a long journey, but I fucking knew that fucker was gonna be back. Yeah, I knew that shit was too easy. Now, after a lot of dying, I've come to a conclusion that this boss fight isn't so great either. Now, Tyrant is badass, don't get me wrong. I'd even say his simple moveset is very effective. The problem is the game's control, which I understand if you say it's not a problem because that's the game's form of difficulty, but I genuinely think that on paper it works. In execution, I think both Yawn and Tyrant are kind of overambitious for this game. Well, Yawn is just overall dog shit, but Tyrant I think is good, but is held back by the fact that there's no way for this to feel like I'm doing anything worthwhile. Maybe if this was a more linear and not open space, but I found myself trial and error, running around a lot, and in my opinion, that is just not fun for a final boss idea. The thought that the last thing you'll be doing in the game is running around, banking on survival attrition, is just kind of a major L, honestly. Granted, I didn't have a lot of ammo, so I'm unsure if you can stun him or even kill him by normal means, but the true final boss of the game, being the abysmal controls, just doesn't sit right with me. Then again, this is my opinion. So if you found both the Yawn and Tyrant to be good bosses, let me know about your experiences and why. The issue is that the only two bosses in the game I didn't find too enjoyable. Tyrant does get a pass and an okay rating because it's nowhere near as bad as it could be, and the idea of an unstoppable force chasing after you is there and it makes you feel that. I just think it chooses the wrong way to make you feel powerless to actually achieve that feeling. After some trial and error, I realized that my bullets weren't working, so I started running around, which even now is hard to do. So after more trial and error and about a minute and a half of running around, Brad drops a rocket launcher. Took you long enough, my guy.
Destroy the monsters with it.
Thank you. Three different angles. That's funny. His face is still moving. Brad lands and picks us up, and we all fly away into the sunset as the Arclay Mountain Laboratory is blown to smithereens. I'm Chris Redfield for real. Chris's playthrough is now over. It was blind, but I had a bit of previous knowledge, so it says 8 hours. But do not be mistaken, this game took me 12 hours to complete. Yes, I know I suck, but I suspect it would have taken even longer without the save state feature. Now, before I cover the story and give a full picture of all that we can surmise happened here at the Arclay Mountain, I'm going to play the game as Jill and see if there are any more significant story beats that we can pick up that allows us to add more context to the bigger picture, as well as compare the differences between the two playthroughs. One thing I had in mind is, where the hell is Barry? He's important enough to have his own character intro and is featured in the cutscene, but I've only seen him in the beginning of the game, so maybe he has relevance in Jill's playthrough? I don't know. We'll see. That dude Wesker was just so different. So different back then.
What is this?
Wow! What a mansion!
Captain Wesker, where's Chris?
Stop it! Don't open that door!
But Chris is...
What is it?
Maybe it's Chris. Now, Jill, can you go?
I'm going with you. Chris is our old partner, you know.
Okay, let me handle this. Stay alert!
As you can see, the first most notable difference is the game's use of Barry and lack of Chris. The cutscene itself is different. This time Chris is missing instead of Barry.
Jill wants to go back outside for Chris after this realization, but Wesker stops her. Now, you could say this is noble, and I'd agree, but I think it's safe to say that Chris and Jill are at the very least close friends. Wesker's energy is also noticeably different. Again, we hear a gunshot. Wesker suggests Jill go off on her own, but Barry chimes in that it'll help and comes with us. Unlike Chris's playthrough, we get a companion this time.
A dining room.
Heading back out the door immediately, Wesker tells us to investigate any gunfire, which, okay, I guess. If you do this on Chris's playthrough, he'll say the same thing, but Jill will just be standing there.
What is it?
Blood. Jill, see if you can find any other clues. I'll be examining this. Hope this is not Chris's blood.
This time there's a pool of blood next to the fireplace. Barry investigates. There's a chance this could be Chris's blood. Believe it or not, I believe the game's opening title actually supports this idea. I imagine it takes place in this hallway, though that could be a stretch. Opening our inventory, we find that we start equipped with a handgun, rather than having to go and find one. I'm unsure as to why Chris doesn't have one. He was shooting one a second ago in the cutscene. I mean, I even went as far as to say that it's not within their character to drop their weapon. Yet it seems like he does in his playthrough. And if Chris is the one whose gunshot we just heard, then somehow he managed to hold on to it in this playthrough. I really don't know why he doesn't start with one. Maybe it's to make you think that you have to kill that zombie with a knife, as a way of teaching you an aspect of the game. Whether or not you choose to fight it or run away, the game forcefully teaches you a lesson. A lesson on how to kill with a knife, or a lesson on which scenarios require you to flee. It could also just be the game's way of indicating the difficulty between the two playthroughs. After playing Jill's playthrough, I believe this to be true.
Barry?
What is it?
Watch out! It's a monster!
Let me take care of this.
3 shots with a fucking magnum? Are you joking?
What is it?
Kenneth was killed too. Maybe by this creature. Anyway, let's report this to Wesker.
Seems I've wasted my ammo.
After re-entering the dining room, the same zombie follows us in. Even if you shoot it, as many times as you shoot it, it doesn't actually matter. Because this is a scripted event, so there's no need to waste our ammo. Barry kills it, which serves as another indicator that this will be easier on Jill's playthrough, as if simply having a companion wasn't a big enough indicator.
Wesker! Help me look for him, Jill. And don't leave this hall for the time being.
We return to Wesker and he's gone. Looking around, there's a hallway behind the stairs. Run through it and we'll trigger the next beat.
Yeah, literally, okay.
Find anything, Jill?
Nothing. What is this all about? I can't figure it out at all.
Beats me too.
Now it's Wesker's time to disappear. I don't know what's going on.
Well, it can't be helped. Let's search for him separately. I'll check the dining room again.
Okay, I'll try the door on the opposite side.
This mansion is gigantic. We could get into trouble if we get lost. We should start from the first floor, okay? And Jill, here's a lockpick. It might be handy if you, the master of unlocking, take it with you.
The Master of Unlocking. Is that a title?
Thanks. Maybe I'll need it.
You fucking will.
Listen, if something happens, let's meet up in this hall. This time, I'll be there.
What do you mean this time?
Since we can't find Wesker, we split up to look for him. Now I know I've said it a few times already, but Jill's playthrough is definitely for new players. Barry being with us isn't just a way to convey story, it's genuinely a way to hold your hand and somewhat guide you. If you play Jill's playthrough blind, you'd hands down complete it faster than if you started Chris's playthrough blind. It's just very clearly designed to be easier and maybe even played first, though there's nothing indicating that you should. I will say, back in the day, the way secrets were discovered and shared was by word of mouth, so it might have been intentional because the developers would just expect people to tell each other. Before we'd set off, Barry gave us a lock. God damn. The lockpick is one of the bigger differences between Chris and Jill. Jill has the ability to use her lockpicking skills to open drawers that hold resources, whereas Chris must find a small key. Heading into the room where we can find the shotgun, we grab it off the wall. As opposed to Chris's playthrough, we don't need the broken shotgun. Trying to leave the room, of course, sets off the trap. Normally you'd want to prevent this from happening, but the door's locked, so we can't. So it looks like impending doom until...
Hey, what's going on?
Jill? Is that you, Jill? What happened?
Barry, help me please. The door won't open. Quick!
Stay away from the door, Jill. I'm gonna kick this door down. Hurry! This way!
Oh, Barry!
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right. Barry, thanks for saving my life.
Oh, I love me a fucking
But Barry,
sandwich.
didn't you say you're going back to the dining room to do some research? Why on earth are you here?
I just had something I wanted to check. Now, let's get back to searching for the lost captain and Chris, shall we?
What kind of
Thank you,
question is
Barry.
that?
Yeah.
What kind of answer is that?
We were almost a Jill sandwich. Jill asks Barry why he showed up, and it is mighty convenient that he happened to be there at the right time. His answer is also pretty sussy. But he just saved our life, so I guess we'll have to pin it to the side for now. More importantly, we have the shotgun this early in the game. Because we listened to Barry and started on the bottom floor, we eventually wrapped around to the hallway that leads outside as well as the right side safe room. Remembering Chris's playthrough, we couldn't open this door from the other side. But since we started on this side, we're free to enter, leading us to the right side corridor. As we continue, we eventually make our way back to the main hall.
Barry!
Jill, what's going on? Any clues?
No, but something's wrong with this house.
Whoa! This hall is dangerous. Maybe it's better to secure our escape route first. There must be a back door somewhere. Let's try to find it first, shall we?
Okay, let's separate again.
Just a moment. I found something.
What is it?
It's a weapon. It's really powerful, especially against living things. Better take it with you.
But how about you, Barry?
I have this.
Thank you. I'll take this then.
A few shots to blow heads off, bro. Acid round. You give me an acid round, but no grenade launcher. I'm running that way. No, I'm running that way. So you gotta come this way. You fucking... Oh, Barry, you.
Again, we meet Barry. He gives us acid rounds, which at first made no sense to me because I can't shoot them out of anything. But I immediately went into the second floor door that leads outside, and to my surprise, there was just a grenade launcher just lying there. The game calls it a bazooka, which is very confusing because this is not a bazooka. A bazooka is a rocket launcher, and this game gaslit me into believing that bazookas have been grenade launchers this whole time, which is not the case. A bazooka is a grenade launcher. I mean, it's a rocket launcher. It's a freaking rocket launcher. I even put it back after using the ammo because my brain didn't put two and two together that the acid rounds go into the grenade launcher because I expected to find an actual grenade launcher. So it sat in my box because I expected to find rockets for it. Yeah, I'm really just an idiot. You can grab the broken shotgun, but it's pointless because we have the shotgun. I grabbed it anyway because I wanted a relic. Entering left side safe room, we found that Rebecca is not here. In fact, she's absent throughout the whole playthrough, just like Barry is in Chris's. Heading to the bar, we need to open a secret door. This can be done without Rebecca because Jill has taken piano lessons. This might come in handy to learn some musical pieces one day, so she learned Moonlight Sonata, and it came in handy for this game in particular. Heading towards where we find the Yawn the first time, we come across another Bravo team member. His name is Richard, and he's been attacked by the Yawn. On Chris's playthrough, he's shown to be dead. Since the Yawn is poisonous, we need to bring Richard some serum.
Richard! What happened?
Oh, Jill, this house is dangerous. There are terrible demons. Ouch!
You're wounded. What kind of demon attacked you?
It was a huge snake, and also poisonous. Ugh.
Poisonous? Oh no. Richard, hold on.
There is serum. Oh no, I should have brought some with me.
No problem. I'll go and get it.
Thanks.
Nigga, Richard's gonna die. We should not go and get that serum. In fact, blow his fucking brains out and just put him out of his misery. I kinda suspected that he was gonna die, so I just found it pointless to do. So I continued through the game as normally, as if I didn't just agree to help him. Of course, he's already dead because even if the poison didn't do anything, the dude has a massive bite in his whole torso. Like, what? Bro was already seeing the light when he mentioned it. In the room with the fish tank, the shells behind the cupboard are replaced with acid rounds. More notably, the researcher's letter you can find is no longer a full letter. Part of it is missing, giving us way less context and more of a mystery. But since we played Chris's playthrough first, we already know what it's about. After completing my playthrough, I find that this letter was the only one that seemed to be cut down this way. After the first Yawn encounter, Jill is poisoned.
Am I poisoned? Give me the serum.
You give yourself the serum, bro. What is that, Wesker? Someone who I assumed to be Barry shows up and takes us to the safe room. Unsure as to why they didn't show his character model. When we wake up, we call out to Barry, but he's not there. Since Richard will die regardless, I put the serum in the chest because in my mind it was useless. I actually shouldn't have, because giving Richard the serum will give us his radio. I missed out on a couple interactions where Brad tries to contact us because of it. Instead, I should have just done it immediately. In the guardhouse, Plant 32 is pretty much the same. The only difference is that Jill doesn't need anyone to save her. We make the V-Jolt and kill it first. Again, Wesker shows up.
Wesker!
Jill, so you're safe.
That's what I was going to say. Where on earth have you been? You disappeared from the hall all of a sudden.
I'm sorry, but I have my reasons. Perhaps you guys have met them? It was all I could do to protect myself against those strange creatures.
Is that right? Anyway, it's good to see you're safe.
Jill, our first priority is to get out of here.
Yes, you're right.
Now, there are a lot of rooms in that mansion that we can't get into because they're locked up. I have been looking around for clues.
Okay, I'll go to the other house and see if I can find any clues.
Will you do that? I'm counting on you.
This time he acts a tad bit sus. He says that it's our priority to try and escape, as opposed to finishing the mission. Again, he tells us to check the mansion. Brad does not contact us on the way back because we have no radio. Again, this is my fault because I didn't save Richard fast enough. These things might have happened if I'd played Jill first. According to the wiki, there's 3 different times in which Brad contacts us that I don't get to experience. After killing the Yawn, Barry shows up and gives us Richard's radio.
Jill, have you found anything interesting?
Yes, but I can't see very well.
How about going down to check by yourself? I have a rope here.
Oh, do you? Well, then I'll try to go down using the rope.
Wait. Yeah, Richard gave this to me. The radio is a keepsake from him.
Richard?
This is more useful to you than me. Ready to go?
Hey, what's going on?
Now I've done it. Sorry, Jill. Wait. I'll go and get another rope.
Barry? Barry?
Yeah, he sounds like he just did that on purpose, but I think it may have been a genuine accident. Underground, we stumble across Enrico.
Is that Jill?
Is that voice Enrico's?
Yeah?
You're alive!
Wait there! Are you with anybody, Jill?
What? Oh no, I'm alone. But why are you asking?
Listen, the stars are going to be finished soon. Someone is a traitor. Everything was plotted from the start by Umbrella.
Enrico! Who killed him, I wonder?
He actually gives us more information than before. He says everything was planned by Umbrella from the start and that the STARS unit is nearly done for because of a traitor.
Jill? Is that you, Jill?
Oh, Chris, you're alive!
Of course. Damn it, we're in quite a predicament, Jill.
I know, Chris. Anyway, I have to open this room. It doesn't work. Well, Chris, I'll be sure to come back and help you soon. Will you wait here?
Thanks. I'll be waiting here for you.
Progressing into the underground lab, Chris is the prisoner this time. Now, I said I believe Jill was swooped up immediately, but I'm unsure what the case is for Chris. After turning on the power and heading to the elevator, it's Barry, and he says he wanted us to wait.
I was looking for you.
Barry.
Jill, don't be angry. I wanted you to wait for me.
Barry, don't screw up again like you did when you dropped that rope.
Yeah, she's mad as fuck for that. Now, believe it or not, there's actually a bit less to laugh at here, so I'm just gonna let it play out.
Jill! I was looking for you.
Barry.
Jill, don't be angry. I wanted you to wait for me.
Barry, don't screw up again like you did when you dropped that rope. Wesker?
You did a fine job, Barry.
Just as I thought.
I think you should stay away from Barry, Jill. I hear that his wife and 2 daughters will be in danger if he doesn't do everything I tell him to.
You are so cruel.
Well, you don't have to worry about anything, because you'll be free from this world very soon, Jill.
Why Why do you have to destroy stars?
That's Umbrella's intention. This laboratory has been engaging in dangerous experiments, and recently an accident has occurred. Anyway, this disaster cannot be made public.
That's why having stars nosing about is so inconvenient. So you're a slave of Umbrella now, along with these virus monsters.
I think you misunderstand me, Jill. To me, the monsters you mentioned mean nothing. I'm going to burn all of them together with this entire laboratory. I must complete my mission as ordered by Umbrella. Barry, go up on the ground and wait there.
Barry!
Barry's such a fool. He'll be under the control of Umbrella forever.
How come both Umbrella and you can intimidate him by taking his family as hostages?
Umbrella? Well, I intimidated him, but it had nothing to do with Umbrella. I just used him for my personal purposes, though both you and Barry seem to think I was following orders from Umbrella.
So you're planning something else?
If you succeeded in developing the world's most powerful biological weapon, what would you do? What if you were in charge?
You must stop this now.
You're a brave girl. But if I were you, I wouldn't give up such a big discovery. You guys are idiots. No one understands its real value.
So, you're going to steal all the research?
Better yet, I'm going to show you the tyrant. Tyrant virus is a super virus, which creates a monster which is much stronger than human beings. Tyrant is the most powerful biological weapon in the world.
You don't mean you're experimenting on real people?
This is really beautiful. All this power will be mine.
For the sake of an awful creature?
Don't be upset. All weak people exist to be eaten. What? Don't come this way! No!
It can't control what it does.
Now, already you can tell that this cutscene actually sounds like a conversation with some coherence. Wesker is like 10 times more menacing in Jill's playthrough than in Chris's. Like, this is the canon Wesker. Let's go ahead and break down what we're getting from this. So, I guess we're not surprised about Barry. Apparently, Wesker has his own motives and is using Barry's family as ransom for something. For what? We have no idea. I have no idea. Very sad stuff, though. Jill asks a great question. She's like, why do you have to destroy stars? Wesker says that Umbrella ordered it, not him. Reason being, they didn't want this accident in the lab to make its way to the public. But considering the note that we found, they should have been more worried about themselves than us. Now, remember, they see this whole situation as a success. Whatever the higher-ups at Umbrella needed from this, they have it. That's why they don't care about losing all of this research. Wesker is doing as he's told, but he sees an opportunity. He thinks we, as well as Umbrella, are idiots for not seeing the value in the tyrant. So he shows it to Jill. Wesker tells us that the Tyrant is a supervirus bioweapon. The Tyrant is a result of experimenting on real people. Jill finds it a lot more menacing than Chris did. Wesker says all weak people deserve to be eaten, which definitely sounds like him. But again, I have no idea why he thought it wouldn't attack him. Maybe his mind is just so twisted that he thought it wouldn't attack him just because he's strong in his head. Regardless, I can imagine wanting more for him if anyone cared about the story back then. Thinking about it, I have no idea why Chris and Jill just stand there. Wesker just gets killed less than a foot away. Like, at least back up a little bit. This time, Wesker drops a key labeled lab key. Inspecting it further, we learn it's called a master key. Jill chimes in on why this shit even happened.
It can't control what it does.
Tyrant is uncontrollable, which makes sense considering it's called a tyrant. I let it kill me to see the animation. For some reason, it only took 2 magnum bullets this time. Afterward, we start to leave, but we find something happened to Barry.
Hi, Jill. It's you.
Barry?
I'm really embarrassed to see you now. Just leave me. Go quickly.
It's over, Barry. Wesker's dead.
Is that so? Jill, will you do me a favor? This is my last wish. Please give this photo to my family. Will you?
Sure.
Forgive me, Jill.
I actually have no idea what happened to him, but all we can really say is that he was attacked by a zombie, which is a major L. He says he feels embarrassed, and Jill provides him solace in the fact that Wesker is dead. He asks us to give this picture to his family. On the back, there's a letter. It reads, "My dearest Moira and Paul, I hope you will grow up to be strong and beautiful women and help to cheer up Mother. Your father will be watching you all from heaven." If you ask me, Barry's death is probably the saddest thing that's happened in this game so far. He left a wife and a couple daughters. I actually really like Barry's character. I wish we could have at least seen how he ended up in this state, because this happening at the end of the game just feels too written. Saving Chris before we speak to Barry gives us the same interaction.
Jill!
Except this time, Chris is just there.
Hi, Jill. It's you.
Barry? Let's get going, Chris. We can't stop.
This is Brad. We're running out of fuel. If there is anyone alive, contact me now, okay? This is your
Oh no, you must be kidding! After we've come all the way here!
Ladies first. Go first, Jill.
But Chris!
Give me a chance to play nice guy.
Okay, I leave it up to you. See you again at the heliport.
When you save Chris, he stays behind and plays nice guy. But there's still no Tyrant battle, so I don't know why he doesn't just come with us. I beat the game without Chris to see if I could, and it does in fact provide you with a different ending.
I was confused as to why I didn't fight the tyrant twice. The reason why is because I didn't save Barry. Apparently I have to wait for Barry to bring the rope back. So we see two endings, one with Jill alone, and the second is with Chris and Jill, but no Rebecca. I suspect there's a couple more endings involving more or less survivors. Okay, since we finally covered both Chris and Jill's playthrough, we can finally break down the story. What the hell is actually happening here? I'm also unsure what exactly is supposed to be canon, so we're gonna go ahead and try to figure that as well. Now let us finally go over the story. We learn this event takes place in the month of July 1998. The story starts by telling us that there have been a string of bizarre murder cases showing up in Raccoon City. What I believe to be a singular group of 10 zombies have been eating whole families as experiments. STARS was investigating these murders closely. Somehow STARS managed to track these attackers back to their hideout in the Arclay Mountains, possibly due to informational leaks. Bravo team disappears about halfway through the mission. STARS Alpha team sets out to investigate Bravo team's disappearance. Once they arrive, they find that Bravo team's helicopter is still there with a bunch of intact equipment. Something caused them to abandon the helicopter in a hurry. Joseph finds a hand still attached to a gun. This startles Joseph and gets attention of the cause that led Bravo team to take refuge in the mansion. We then get our first look at Cerberus, the K9 bioorganic weapon. It chases us into the mansion as well. STARS splits up to search the mansion. Scattered around the mansion, we find all of the Bravo team members dead, except Rebecca and Richard, though Richard dies by the Yawn as we arrive. In the mansion, zombies roam. They used to be the researchers and other staff members that occupy this residency. We find some documents and letters. The first one we come across is the Keeper's diary. The letter informs us that the Keeper is responsible for taking care of animals that were being used for research and experiments. More importantly, it also informs us of the accident in the lab. Since the Keeper mentions the accident on May 11th, we can assume that's when this accident caused everyone at the facility to become zombies. Everyone except the Keeper and maybe whoever Ada is. Unsure as to what the case is for Ada. Since this is a diary, we get entries over a course of a couple weeks, the first being May 9th and the last being May 19th. Through these entries, we learn of the process of becoming a zombie. Now remember earlier when I said that the process started with a deterioration of the mind, but rather than it being a case of simply losing emotional regulation, instead I think it starts with the loss of critical thinking, because the way he speaks through this process just seems as though he's lacking awareness or just any idea of why he doesn't feel well, or that he doesn't feel well. And I do think that he could just be a dick, but critical thinking is pretty much imperative to being able to emotionally regulate, so that could explain why he felt better after getting revenge on the dogs. Again, he could just be a dick. He's told to wear a protection suit by Scott the guard, who also has one on. He gets blisters and his flesh becomes swollen. He seeks treatment and is told that he doesn't have to wear it anymore. I think this is to give the Keeper reassurance that he'd be fine, even though it's a lie. He continues to take care of the animals, but his limbs begin to stop working. The animals escape. He then tries to leave to see Nancy, who may be a loved one, but he's stopped by a guard and is told that no one can leave or make contact to the outside. A researcher tries to escape and is executed. The Keeper's flesh begins to rot and falls off. On the final days, the Keeper can still write, but he effectively has the mind of a zombie. He then kills Scott and eats him. Itchy tasty. Now, I mentioned that the accident isn't the reason why the Keeper is a zombie. This is because I believe he was bitten by one of the dogs and became infected. It would make sense why he feels the need to take his anger out on them. What else could the dogs possibly do that's so bad?
The letter also tells us it's pretty much the Keeper's fault for all the non-zombies roaming around as well. I'm curious as to where the Yawn was supposedly held because that thing is big and playing throughout the game I can't really tell where its cage is supposed to be. Maybe it's just a random snake that just happened to be infected? The next document is called a researcher's letter and is written by Martin Crackhorn. It's a letter to his beloved Alma. He wasn't allowed to talk to her because Wesker stopped him. He mentions he was headhunted by a pharmaceutical company which we now know to be Umbrella. Umbrella's researchers were studying a virus, which we know to be the T-virus. And after the accident, it escaped the lab, causing everyone to become zombies. Martin says that the virus strips away your humanity. This is what the Keeper was going through. Martin understands what's happening. He was even able to delay its effects for a couple days. I think this delay is what kept his mind intact. This is why he's written coherent sentences rather than his mind deteriorating. He then says he's going to take out the only way that he knows. Both of these letters explain the process of becoming a zombie and why. Umbrella was studying the T-virus, which after an accident escaped the lab and turned everyone into zombies, causing people to lose their humanity and rot inside their own bodies while still alive. Since both Martin and the Keeper mentioned being stopped when trying to communicate, we can tell that Umbrella didn't want this information getting out at all, going as far as to execute anyone who tried to escape. Which of course is a messed up thing, but it was honestly a sealed deal as soon as the accident occurred. Playing devil's advocate, you simply don't want zombies running rampant and spreading the disease. Even if Umbrella's reasoning was more sinister, it wouldn't have been a good idea to let any infected researcher leave in the first place, especially when authorities have already been looking into the experiments you've been conducting on random families. The next important document is orders. We can presume these are the orders that Wesker was given. They're top secret. The document is dated July 22nd, 1998. After a quick Google search, we learned that July 22nd, 1998 was a Wednesday, meaning that there were 4 days left in the week. So the day we arrive could be any day between the 22nd and the 26th. Because X Day is approaching, Wesker has 3 orders to complete. The first order is to lure Stars here to have us fight the various bioorganic weapons for the purpose of collecting combat data. Now at first I was unsure what the combat data would be used for, but I think I figured it out. And I believe the answer is actually in a later game. I think this is a setup for what the story holds later on. The first order also leads me to believe that Wesker was stalking us throughout the whole game. If not him, then at least Barry. I think this because he was ordered to collect combat data, which he could only do through stalking us. It's not like there's cameras around. I think that's the reason why Enrico was silenced before he could say anything more. It'd also explain why Barry was acting suspicious when he questioned why he was so close to Jill after grabbing the shotgun. Wesker probably told him to collect combat data on us as well, so Wesker and Barry were probably stalking us throughout the whole game. The second order is to collect 2 embryos of each of the BOWs, except Tyrant. Considering what Wesker says at the end of the game, the exclusion of the Tyrant makes sense. Because Wesker thinks Umbrella are idiots, it's logical to assume that Umbrella sees the Tyrant the same way Crest did, as a quote failure. Where Umbrella sees a failure, Wesker sees an opportunity for what he believes to be the ultimate power. The third order is to destroy the entire lab as well as everyone and everything inside it. Yeah, they did not want this information getting out by any means. Considering what the orders are, I think it makes sense that X Day is the day that the lab was supposed to be blown up. I think Umbrella wanted to use Stars for combat data and get rid of them in one fell swoop. In the guardhouse, Wesker says we should complete the mission. I think this is because he wants to complete his mission. Also in the guardhouse, we get a document labeled Plant 42, and it explains the nature of a BOW plant, written by Henry Sarton. We also get the date it was written, May 21st, 1998, 4 days after the accident, meaning that the accident had to have occurred on May 17th, 1998. But that wouldn't make any sense, because on May 11th, the Keeper mentions to have heard about an accident in the lab, meaning it had to have been on the 11th instead, not the 17th. After looking online, I have reason to believe that this is a discrepancy. Checking the date May 17th on the wiki, it says, an unexplained accident at the RK Laboratories dormitory building causes a monster plant to bloom. The OG Resident Evil doesn't differentiate between the 2 accidents, so I assume this info is clarified in the remake. In the scrapbook, which I suspect to have been made by either John or Ada, we get a few articles. Raccoon Times, May 27th, 1998. On May 20th, a woman was attacked in Arklay Mountains. Her body washed up after falling into a riverbank. She was likely killed by a zombie or a Cerberus. Raccoon Weekly, June 16th, 1998.
an article making Cerberus out to be an urban legend, telling hikers to see it as adventurous as what I believe to be a reverse psychology, playing off the danger of actually encountering a Cerberus. I believe Raccoon Weekly is a biased news outlet paid off by Umbrella. Raccoon Times, July 9th, 1998. Mountain roads are blocked due to successive disasters. The police are searching the forest for the lost people with the help of stars. Perhaps that's what the Delta team is up to, if there even is one. In the underground, we find Enrico in a sorry state. I don't think I said it before, but I think Enrico led Bravo team. He tells us that everything was planned from the start and that there's a traitor among the stars. Which of course we know that considering the orders we read, and Wesker is the traitor, so. Enrico is then killed. I'd say that Wesker killed him, but I suppose it could have been Barry as well. Either way, it's Wesker's fault. Now considering the line of dialogue, I don't believe Enrico was supposed to die like we were. It's difficult to tell what's canon, so we'll go over it after this section of the video. But I think Enrico was also a traitor. On Chris's playthrough, when he gets shot, he says, "All hell Umbrella." Now this could be a way to just spice up the game, but I think Wesker and Enrico were on the same mission. But because Wesker wanted the tyrant for himself, I suspect Enrico would have felt the need to tell Umbrella about that, which would cause Wesker to take preventative measures. Once we enter the underground lab, we find a couple more significant documents. The first being a letter from our mole John to Ada, dated June 8th, 1998. Again, another researcher aware of their impending doom. He says that Ada came out negative for T-virus and that she should escape and make all of this public. Next is a fax from Special Committee on Disasters Raccoon Special Research Department to General Manager of Sanitation Division. Which, giving it extra thought, the General Manager of Sanitation Division might be Wesker? The T-virus damage is greater than suspected before. The security operation is still active, but the security squad has been destroyed. Allowing for info to make its way to outsiders. They find these events to be proof of their success in research. However, they also find it difficult to cover this up. The security operation being active is why no one was allowed to leave or make contact. I don't think the security squad died from becoming zombies. Scott seemed to be protected from the virus as he had a little spacesuit protection thingy on. You'd think Scott would be turning into a zombie about the same time as the Keeper, but considering the Keeper ate Scott, I think Scott's death is probably the same way other security guards died. They likely all had these suits on as a precaution. I mean, how else are you going to keep your infected researchers from escaping if security is also infected themselves? They were probably killed by the newly formed zombies. They probably didn't realize everyone there was turning into zombies until it was too late. I mean, hearing that everyone is infected and sick doesn't make your mind automatically go to, okay, they're turning into zombies then. So security was probably just doing their job until it was too late, which puts into perspective of how incredibly fucked up this whole situation actually is. That's not to say that the security guards themselves aren't fucked up, but everyone is turning into zombies and Umbrella is still conducting research. They effectively let everyone become zombies. Martin was the only one who even made an attempt to delay its effects, and giving it extra thought, the guards that were wiped out probably didn't even know that's what was about to happen. They probably just did not know that people were turning into zombies and are probably being paid enough to follow vague orders blindly, not realizing that they're also dooming themselves to the same fate. If they did know what was happening, then it makes it all the more messed up in pretty much every way, because it implies that these people were devoted enough to die for Umbrella. I mean, they were okay with people being executed for trying to escape, so it's not really too far-fetched. Though I think I'll stick with the idea that they're oblivious, because to me that makes more sense. In the security doc, we learn that Wesker must be present if the virus is to be used. That's because he's one of the head researchers. We also learned the specific reason that one researcher was executed. No one is allowed passage to the helicopter unless a research consultant or security director attends them. All others will be shot on sight. We get some names alongside Wesker's. These people, if not dead, may or may not show up later on in the story. Next, we're confronted by Wesker. We learn that despite working for Umbrella, he still has other plans. He's using Barry's family as a way to get him to do his bidding. We don't know for what exactly. This could be more set up for the future. Wesker tells us that due to a failed experiment, an accident occurred in the lab. Again, what exactly happened? I don't know. But it caused the T-virus to spread throughout the lab. Umbrella already has what they need.
We know all they wanted were the BOW embryos, excluding the tyrants. Wesker doesn't care about anything but the tyrant, and Umbrella doesn't care about anything but the other BOWs. He tells us that the T-Virus is a supervirus, and we learn that the tyrant is a result of the T-Virus experiments on real people. Wesker wants the tyrant powers for himself. He lets the tyrant out, and it kills him. This is because the tyrant cannot be controlled, which is probably why Umbrella would see it as a failure. The tyrant is killed. Stars makes an escape while the laboratory gets blown up, getting rid of all the evidence as intended. And that is the Resident Evil director's cut. I hope that was coherent enough. To summarize, the pharmaceutical company Umbrella was studying a virus. A failed experiment caused an outbreak and doomed Umbrella researchers and staff to become zombies. This was serendipitous for Umbrella. We surmised that Umbrella is evil. The security operation was meant to keep this under wraps, but info made its way to outsiders. This may have been the reason Stars was able to track the attackers back to Arklay Mountain. There, Stars fights on many different BOWs, and Stars is nearly wiped out with the exception of a few survivors. Wesker is killed by the tyrant, and Stars makes an escape as the laboratory is blown up. Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 seem to be direct sequels to this game. RE2 actually takes place 24 hours before this one, so it's kind of not really a sequel but another story at the same time. So instead of laying out a timeline, I'm gonna save that for another video. Now, after all this, I have a single question. Which playthrough is canon? I figured it'd be Jill's playthrough just because it seemed a bit more story heavy, but it's also logical to assume that both playthroughs have canon events. For example, I think Rebecca and Barry are both characters you'd say were present despite either one's absence. I think canonically Barry's family is being held for ransom. I think Rebecca blew up the facility. I think canonically Chris and Jill killed the tyrant. Thing is, I think the canon events have to be very surface level, though it's also one of those things that is more speculation. On Reddit, there's a post asking the same question, and from the responses, it seems that the way people see it, both are kind of canon, but not really. Some think Chris's playthrough is closer to canon, and some think Jill's is closer to canon. I personally think Jill's is closer to canon, because we actually get genuine story pieces, and not just, you know what I mean. Choi J and Film Fuckery on Reddit say, we only know who survived. On Chris's playthrough you can save Rebecca, on Jill's you can save Barry, meaning both playthroughs are canon in some way. This is just fan speculation at this point, but honestly it's kind of the way I see it. Apparently this means that none of the endings are canon. Both Barry and Rebecca survive, but there's no ending that depicts that. Now it's time for my thoughts on the story. It's entertaining. I like it. I don't think it's impressive by any means, but it's definitely part of the experience. It's charming. The writing is definitely a miss though, if I'm being honest. The concept of your surface level plot being the only canon prospect is kind of weird to me. If you play through this game for the story, it may be disappointing. But if you're looking for something silly with a proper horror aspect to it, then this game nails that. I guess it's easier to overlook when you consider that a lot of horror movies are the same way. It's easier when you want something different. This is definitely an experience that you don't want to take that seriously. Like, I like it, but I still have some questions that aren't explained. Why the hell does Wesker hate Chris and Jill so much? Who the hell is White Umbrella, and what was Barry being used for? And this isn't necessarily my complaint, but someone mentioned, why is Brad just flying around the whole time, just waiting for his fuel to get low? I didn't think of that on my own, but now that it's in my brain, I can't unthink it. And I'm not sure if I'm supposed to believe these things aren't canon or are. Like, that's where it's kind of where it's confusing. I think the game kind of underestimated how much we'd be invested in these characters and just the general plot. No wonder the remake came out less than a decade later. Now, these questions may be answered in the next couple games, but for now, as it is, I'll give the story a 6 out of 10. And those 6 points are pretty much entertainment points, mostly. Maybe I'll bump it up to a 7 just to say that it's good, in a sense where you will enjoy it. You know, I'll give it a 7 out of 10. It gets a 7 out of 10 for me. I can't really praise the story for being something it's not though, if you know what I mean. Like, I enjoy the story's existence and wouldn't have it be any other way, and I like to appreciate art in that sense, but I'm not blinded by nostalgia or charm, so I think I'm gonna bump the 7 back down to a 6.5 for the story. Yeah, that sounds good, a 6.5. Now, I kind of made this video in real time, so there's some things that I missed and got wrong and want to correct. You cannot skip cutscenes unless it's pre-rendered. I had no idea, but Rebecca is supposed to be a small mechanic in herself. She's there to heal you. I don't know the criteria or if there even is a criteria to get her show up, but that's definitely something I missed. If you say no to her when she asks to come with you, then after Chris gets poisoned from the Yawn, instead of her being playable, it cuts to black and you wake up in the left side safe room. Again, she can heal your wounds. Not much changes at all. I feel like an idiot for not realizing that BOW meant bioorganic weapon. My mind just, for some reason, did not click there, even though we're playing Resident Evil. The zombies have a method, I just suck. The zombies sway to the side as a part of their walk pattern. All you have to do is wait for an opening to run past them, though this doesn't always work. I found out later that the rewind features are just save states. It's an emulator thing. I'm not gonna pretend like I'm that smart. I assure you I am not tech savvy. The flamethrower isn't available on Jill's playthrough. The second playthrough on the same save will give you a special key. This will open a closet allowing for a change of wardrobe. Waiting for Barry, he'll give you a passcode to open this door. There is no way to return to the main menu. Saying no to Rebecca in the bar, she stays anyway, but we get different lines of dialogue. In the same playthrough, Rebecca will take you to the safe room herself rather than having to play as her. You can save Barry from dying at the end. Simply wait for him to go and get a rope. Alright, those are the things I missed as well as things I wanted to correct. And now we've finally reached the end of the video. And I enjoy this game. I genuinely do. After getting used to the controls, I find it to be a lot easier of a game to play, but I stick by what I said in the beginning. The controls just aged poorly. Even more, the story is interesting on the surface, but there's just a lot of stupid shit that even the movies back then wouldn't pull. But I find that part of the experience is kind of one of the most appealing things. As our Lord and Savior Critical always says, there's bad and there's funny bad. This is funny bad. But I can't help but operate on the same wavelength as the rest of the fan base when I say this shit is just downright charming. It's dumb, but it's satisfying. It's enjoyable, and that's what matters most. The game is crafted in a way where the story doesn't even need to matter actually. The culmination of the performance of cheesy dialogue, the 90s game graphics, and most importantly the vision that crafted this is enough. It's truly gold. And I like to see it as an art project in that sense. As art, this game is amazing. It has some jank, but if you're into retro horror experiences, it could really provide you that feeling that you're looking for. The aesthetic is almost one of a kind in a sense. For anyone who's remotely interested in these kinds of games, you should definitely try this out. Even if you don't get far into the game, just walking around the original Spencer Mansion, I can't even call it the Spencer Mansion, huh? But just walking around as either Chris or Jill, it really hits different, especially at 3 AM in the dark. I do wish the puzzles were a bit more difficult though. With that being said, I cannot recommend it for your average casual gamer. It hurts to say, but it's really too much of a fuck this fest at the beginning, and games back then were particularly brutal. Resident Evil is virtually a pioneer in this aspect, so in a sense that's kind of why we have videos like this one. If you can see yourself branching out, then by all means give it a try. But at the end of the day, I think your average gamer would rather play something they can be good at. And that isn't even to say that you can't be good at Resident Evil, or there isn't a way to be good at Resident Evil. But this game can get tedious very fast for the average gamer, especially if you're playing this game without save states. A blind crisp playthrough without save states would probably make you just hop back on Call of Duty or Fortnite. Someone who's new to the franchise, definitely do not start here. If you're looking for that retro horror aesthetic and want a challenge, and don't mind all the jank, then maybe this game could be for you, but honestly, I doubt it. You're better off starting with the remakes and working your way back. You at least want a proper introduction into the franchise before you pick an objectively more brutal experience to introduce you. But with that being said, I think I've covered everything that I want to. And overall, I enjoyed my time with this game, and I give the overall experience an 8 out of 10. Thank you all for actually getting to this point, or if you clicked through the video and managed to get here, hello, thanks anyway, thank you. I spent a good amount of time on this project, and kind of just to distract myself from real world things. I'm gonna go ahead and try to do a different game before I hop back on Resident Evil and tackle the Resident Evil 2 or the Resident Evil 2 Director's Cut or whatever it is. But yeah, thank you for getting this far. I really appreciate it. So last thing I did want to cover, I'm not gonna like break them down or anything, but I'm gonna go ahead and let the other endings roll out, because I only covered a few, but there's more. So I'm gonna go ahead and let those roll out. And yeah, thank you for getting this far. Thank you for watching the video. Why not leave a like and subscribe, see what I got planned for the future. Yeah, peace out. Have a good one.
tired, Rebecca?
Sorry, Chris. I am.
You did a really good job. This case was just too weird. This case was...
kids, they always wait up for me. Even today, my oldest daughter. I'm sorry.
Don't worry about that. I know he must still be alive.